10 years ago, a sudden wave of epidemics swept across the planet, turning people into zombies. Then the usual human life came to an end. A long period of chaos followed, clashes occurred everywhere, people cut each other for resources or to capture shelters. Some even killed for fun. Along the East Lapis Road there were many corpses of people killed in brutal ways. The main character's name is Yangjing. He is 20 years old and a year ago he received the Doomsday System. Now he was riding a motorcycle and drove onto a bridge. The system gave him a task to subjugate the Shaba gang. For this he can get additional level points. The rewards given by this system can be used to increase the level of anything, and this changed his fate. He rode forward and nothing foreshadowed trouble, but suddenly he dozed off and opened his eyes in time, seeing a metal tripwire at neck level. He rested his neck on the wire, and his motorcycle flew on. In the end, Yangjing fell on the road, and the people who installed the tripwire looked out of the truck and one of them exclaimed that they had killed another one. The gang leader patted him on the head, and said that the steel wire had never failed him yet. Their gang couldn't even find a decent set of clothes, and this guy was wandering around in such a suit. Could he really be an aristocrat from Dawn City? They needed to search his bike. They would surely find something useful. One of the gang members had already examined the bike and replied that there was nothing there, and he cursed and exclaimed that he couldn't have left the house empty-handed when the world was ending. Was it for nothing that they had been hanging around for so long? Let them chop his body into pieces. Another guy jumped out of the truck and walked towards Yangjing. Then he raised the machete over his head with a smile and stabbed him. But suddenly something flashed and blood spurted out. The guy's arm was separated from his body, and his head flew straight into the leader's hands. He looked at it in shock, and then looked up at his body, which was still trying to stay on its feet. Then the corpse fell and the gang leader pointed his finger at Yangjing, cursed and exclaimed, "He was just pretending to be dead, right? Who the hell is he?" The protagonist adjusted his suit, and the gang leader thought, what just happened? What killed his comrade? The MC said that while he hasn't done anything, he wants to clarify something. Were they the ones who massacred the camp on East Lapis Road? The man smirked in response and confirmed his words, asking, "So what's wrong with that?" He pointed his finger at his gang members and said that he and his brothers had done this. One of them said that not only had they killed all the men there, but they had also had fun with their women. Another guy said that this was completely normal. He was not like that. He had hanged a family of 3 alive and watched as the necks of those little brats were broken. This was terribly interesting. Upon hearing this, Yangjing closed his eyes and said that at first he had wanted to do everything painlessly. Then he looked at them with a threatening look and continued, saying that now he promised that they would all die in agony. The gang leader became nervous and exclaimed, "Does he think he can handle them alone?" He ordered his brothers to kill him, after which they took out their guns and opened fire. By stretching out his hand forward, he easily slowed down the bullets and said that this would not even scratch him. All the bullets hit his suit and immediately bounced off, causing him minimal damage, and the gang leader was surprised and thought, "Does this idiot have a bulletproof suit?" He pulled out a gun himself, and in a rage told him to die, after which he shot him in the head. When the bullet hit MC in the forehead, his head fell back and he himself began to lose balance. The gang leader liked this and lowered the gun, saying that he had a good suit, it was just a pity that it did not protect his head. But the main character was alive, taking a stable stance. He put his foot on the ground and broke it, and there was only a small dent on his forehead. The bullet that hit him in the head caused him only 10 units of damage. The gang leader was very surprised by this, and exclaimed that this could not be. He was shot in the head, how can he stand on his feet? MC threw a stern look at them and said that now it was his turn, after which he took out a sword and pointed the gun at them, shooting. The bullet whistled past the gang members' heads and then the MC took off after it, leaving behind bright streams of aura. He caught up with the bullet and cut it in half, after which the gang leader asked in surprise what he did. His buddy told him to turn around and he exclaimed how did he suddenly end up there. He looked at his body and said that it looked funny, but it didn't even hit them. Suddenly, one of his gang members looked down at his hand and, seeing how it was burning with blue fire, nervously called out to him, after which the flames enveloped his entire body, and he screamed loudly in pain. Obviously not expecting this, the gang leader looked at him in shock, and then all his comrades instantly burst into flames, and he exclaimed what was happening. At that moment, a flash appeared under his feet. He was engulfed in exactly the same flames and clutching his neck, he screamed that his throat was burning. He reached out to Yangjing and begged for mercy, and Yangjing walked past him and said that he should tell all this personally to the king of the underworld when he got to hell. After that, he put away his sword and took out his sunglasses, and the system reported that the task was completed. He received 2 level points. The protagonist got on his bike and rode further along the road, ordering the system to add level points to the bike, and it reported that his vehicle had been upgraded to a better quality. Hellfire enhancement received. The bike's speed increases by 100%. MC twisted the throttle, releasing blue flames from the exhaust, and then tore further at high speed and rode out onto the flooded road. His bike easily crossed the water, drying the road behind it. A year ago, he suddenly fell into a puddle, and one of the 2 men who beat him asked, "Where did this redneck come from? How dare he steal the food and property of the Fong family?" He wiped the blood from his face and replied that he had been picking fruit in this forest for years, and they had only been here for a few minutes and were already calling this place the Fong family's property. In response, the man pulled a sticker out of his pocket and stuck it on the tree trunk, after which he said that from now on this forest officially belongs to this family. MC got really angry and exclaimed, "Have they become completely insolent? And how are the rest of the people supposed to survive?" In response, he only received a punch in the face, which made him fall on his back, and the man told him goodbye, that if they saw him in this forest again, he would be finished. After that they left, and he was left alone on the coast. Sitting by the tree, he thought that the Fong family was taking over more and more neighboring territories. If this continued, he would have no time to go. Suddenly a system window appeared in front of him, congratulating him on receiving the Doomsday system. At first he didn't understand what it was, and then his status window appeared in front of him with his initial stats: strength, speed, endurance, resistance to mental and other attacks, and available level points. He was given an initial title called Cleansing. Let him use the items given by the system to tidy himself up. For this he will receive 1 level point. The system threw a knife, shaving foam, and a razor at his feet. He took it and walked to the edge of the water, smeared the foam on his face, and looked at his reflection, saying that even if it was all pretty weird, what's the point of refusing? It can hardly get any worse. After he shaved, he trimmed his hair with the knife and told the system that he was done. What next? A system window appeared in front of him, which informed him that the initial task was completed. He received 1 level point. These points can be used to improve any item. Different objects require different amounts of points. Seeing the line that anything can be improved, the protagonist rubbed his chin thoughtfully, then remembered that he had a fruit in his pocket and took it out. Seeing that it was crushed, he became slightly upset, then clenched it in his fist and said that it did not matter, there was no choice. He told the system that he wanted to improve the crushed fruit, and when he opened his hand, he did not see it and exclaimed, "Where did it go?" Suddenly a suspicious sound was heard behind him, as if something was cracking. He turned around and looked at the tree that had grown on the sand in surprise, after which the system informed him of a new task called Zombie Exterminator. He needs to kill 20 zombies. For this he will receive 1 level point. In addition to the reward for completing the task, he will receive experience points by killing zombies. When the experience bar is full, he will receive a level point. Soon it was night. He climbed to the top of a growing tree and started eating fruits, wondering, is he completely crazy? Why should he fight zombies, and on an empty stomach? He ate some fruits and then fell asleep, but suddenly through his sleep he felt a burning smell and opened his eyes, thinking, is something burning? He looked down and became very nervous. The tree trunk he was sleeping on was engulfed in flames, and the men standing nearby said that they had warned him. They had also told him not to cross their path again. This was the result of him ignoring the Fong family's warning. The protagonist's face darkened. He realized that he had completely forgotten about those idiots, and then he thought in rage that as long as people like the Fong family existed, people like him would never live in peace. He stood up and took out a knife, mentally telling them that they had asked for this. Suddenly, one of the men asked his comrade, "Where did that tree on the beach come from?" It was kind of weird, didn't he think? He replied that they probably just hadn't noticed it before. Let him forget about it, they would burn it anyway along with that idiot. At that moment, the idiot jumped down from the tree and raised a knife above his head, then landed and swung it down, cutting his body in half. Seeing this, the second man froze in shock, then pulled out a gun from under his pants, and MC also rushed towards him. A shot rang out. The bullet missed Yangjing, but then he pierced the opponent's chest with a knife, then lowered his trembling hand holding the gun, and then pulled the gun out of his body. The man's corpse fell on the sand, and then MC turned around and looked at the burning tree, thanking the Fong family for reminding him that people like him are much better off without them. Today, they burned his tree, and in the future, he will burn their family business to the ground. Time passed. Somewhere in the mountains, he killed several zombies and rose to level 3, receiving 6 points. As a reward for completing the task, he received a torn jacket, torn sweatpants, and torn sneakers. He thought with disappointment that he had been killing zombies all morning and received such a shameful drop. He also received 35 rounds for 11.43mm pistol, after which he clenched his hand into a fist and thought that it was good that he managed to get points and level up 2 levels. It became much easier for him to deal with zombies compared to what it was at the beginning. Now he was at level 3, his strength, speed, endurance, and resistance to mental attacks had increased to 3 units, but resistance to other attacks remained at 0. Now he has 6 level points available. He clicked something on the system window and put on the clothes he received from the zombies, then a pistol, and said that he still had 3 points left. It would be nice to increase his own level. In this world, not only ordinary zombies live, but also much stronger furious monsters. They are harder to kill and their bodies work much better than normal zombies, and some of them may even have abilities. This gun will be useless against enraged zombies. The system asked if he wanted to level up this gun. He agreed and spent 1 point. Then a system window popped up in front of him, informing him that the gun had been upgraded. He received an enchanted gun, which adds 50% damage. He spent 2 more level points and received a superior gun, which adds 50% to damage, penetration, and range. To upgrade the weapon to an ancient marksman's gun, he needs 3 more level points. When upgraded, damage, range, and penetration increase by 200%, and a special skill called ricochet shooting is added. With the help of a ricochet, he can hit a target located off the line of fire. For the next upgrade, he needs to complete the current quest and get 4 level points. The ancient gunslinger's pistol can be upgraded to the legendary John pistol, which increases all stats by 200% and adds the lock-on skill. It can lock onto a specified location for a shot, with a 100% hit rate. It also has a special instant shooting skill, allowing the shooter to teleport to any location along the bullet's trajectory. Yang Jing looked at his upgraded weapon and asked, "What's wrong? Has the appearance not changed even after upgrading? Does he need to spend points on a new skin?" Suddenly, he heard gunshots nearby. A man froze in fear, and then his head was shot through by a man named Hatuo, who was part of the Fang family's mercenary corps. He looked at the corpse and said that he should have run away. He would have died somewhere else. He just wasted a bullet on him. One of the soldiers called him the leader and asked, "What are they going to do with the woman?" Hatuo smirked, and the girl named Shiochi, who was sitting on the ground, trembled with fear, and he asked what they should do. She just lost a comrade, obviously they need to take care of her. After these words, he turned to her with a smirk, and the protagonist had already found them and was now watching them from behind a tree. He saw 5 people, 4 armed with guns, 1 with a revolver and a regular military uniform. He is currently level 3, if he adds points to upgrade his weapon, he should have an advantage. Hato meanwhile approached the girl and asked if she will undress herself or should he help her. She looked up at him with tear-stained eyes and he, stretching out his hand to her, said that he hasn't met such beauties for a long time. Let her not make him wait. Suddenly a bullet pierced his head, then MC jumped out of his hiding place and opened fire on the rest of the soldiers. They were startled at first, then turned around and saw the one shooting at them. The protagonist did not stop firing at them and killed several more people, after which he reloaded his gun. He went out into the clearing and finished off the remaining soldiers, then sat down next to the girl and she thought, what will he do? She resigned herself to her fate and thought that she would endure it, since he saved her. Besides, he is cute, she will survive this. Suddenly, a system window with an emergency task appeared in front of Yang Gang's eyes: save the victim. As a reward, he will receive 2 level points. The task is not yet completed. MC rubbed his chin and thought that this was some kind of nonsense. He definitely killed all the Fang family soldiers, he is sure that they are dead. Why then did the quest not close? Suddenly, an idea came to his mind and at that moment, Xiaoqi pointed her finger behind him in horror, warning him of danger. Hatuo's silhouette appeared behind Yang Jing. There was nothing human left in his appearance, and he said with a smile that now he understood what it was like to catch a bullet in the head. It was even nice. He had relaxed too much, but a mere human couldn't destroy him. Now they were finished. The girl became very nervous and he, seeing her reaction, laughed loudly and asked, were they scared already? And he hadn't even shown how terrifying he could be. Xiaoqi kept looking at him and suddenly nausea rose in her throat, after which she vomited and stepped aside, saying that she couldn't be here, he was too scary. Hatoa crouched down, exclaiming that this was nonsense, and then rushed to MC and extended his fist to his face, then struck and said that one was ready. From his strength, the body of the trailer was pretty crumpled, and he said that people were like thin paper to him. After that, he aimed at the girl and said that it was her turn now, but suddenly he felt that he couldn't get closer to her and turned around, exclaiming, "Is his hand stuck?" He cursed loudly and walked towards the hole he had made, and seeing Yang Jing inside the trailer who was clenching his fist, he exclaimed, "Did he block his blow? This is impossible." The protagonist pulled him towards him and kneed him in the stomach, throwing him towards the tree. The monster hit his back on the tree trunk and left a dent on it, after which he sat down on one knee and asked, "How can an ordinary person be so strong? Is he a zombie soldier? But he doesn't smell like them." He suddenly noticed that he was missing from the trailer, and Xiaoqi, noticing his confusion, looked into the hole herself, and then shrugged. At this time, MC was already very close to the monster and pointed a gun at his head, saying that he would only ask once. "Who are these zombie soldiers?" Hatoa turned to him with a smile and said that it was obvious. Zombie soldiers were high-level military units obtained by crossing furious zombies and humans. He began to use his ability without noticing and thought that no matter how much he thought about it, he still couldn't figure out why he was so strong. But he could try to talk him down and distract them until he hit his brain stem. He had a chance to fight back. MC exclaimed, "And who bred these zombie soldiers?" He replied that it was Fang Weining, the head scientist of the Fang Family Research Lab. Yang Jing frowned when he heard that name again, and the monster at this time was glad that he had doubts and thought that if he confused him even more, he would have a chance. Suddenly, a bullet pierced his head and he exclaimed in his mind, "Why did he suddenly shoot?" He fell on his back and thought that young people have no idea what a fair fight is. Why did he shoot before he even finished speaking? Lucky he missed the brain stem. He will pretend to be dead for now, and when he recovers, he will find strong zombie soldiers and kill him. Suddenly, MC shot him in the head again, and again, exclaiming in rage, "Fang family, right? They are annoying him more and more." He continued to shoot at the zombie's body, repeating this family name with a terrifying smile, and Xiaoqi thought he was so scary. After the bullets ran out, the system reported that the task was completed. He received 2 level points. Since the experience bar is full, he gets an additional point. Now he has 3 points available. He thought that these level points calmed him down. He uses 1 point to level up himself, and saves the rest for later. His level increased to 4 along with other stats. He received a new skill called Point Recycling. It can take away the level points of the upgraded target, and the level will decrease. Cooldown 24 hours. The girl noticed him staring into space and came closer, asking what he was looking at. He walked away from her towards the corpse and said that she was not in any danger, so she should leave here. He took a revolver, a bolt-action rifle and a tactical vest, and she said that she would pay him to escort her to the village. He refused and said that he did not have time to work as her bodyguard. He thought that his main goal was to kill as many zombies as possible to collect more level points. He better prepare for the next fight. He got up and headed into the forest, saying goodbye to her, but suddenly became very angry when he felt her grab his leg. She started crying and exclaimed that what if she met bad people like these on the way back? Could a caring hero like him allow a beauty like her to be bullied again? Simple zombies are still okay, but also furious ones can jump out of nowhere. It's so creepy, so let him see her off. Her grandfather is the village headman, he will be paid well for this. A system window with a side quest with an escort popped up in front of Yang Deng's face. He needs to safely deliver this pink-haired girl back to her village. As a reward, he will receive 2 level points. He stopped and thought that real-life tasks can apparently be transferred to the system. He accepted this task, after which he went to the car dump with her. She said that this place is completely on the other side of her village. What are they doing here? He replied that he was looking for a car. She said that these cars have been rotten for 10 years. What does he need this for? Suddenly, he found a suitable vehicle and approached the car without an engine, saying that its condition was a little better. Shuchi didn't understand how this car was different from the others, and with her eyes closed, she started waving her arms to the sides, saying that either she had suddenly gone blind, or this car had no engine. The main character laughed awkwardly and said that it was very funny, after which he touched the car and used his enhancement ability, which made it glow brightly. The girl had to cover her eyes and asked what was going on. She couldn't see anything. But as soon as the glow faded and she looked at the car, she was very surprised. After the enhancement, the car without an engine turned into a sports car and she, pointing at it in shock, exclaimed that it was some kind of illusion. Then they got inside and hit the road. Xiaoqi, sitting in the front seat, looked around the interior in surprise and said with admiration that in their time, few people could afford a working car, except for the rich people from the Dawn City. But he was able to turn a rusty junk into a luxury car, like a magician. Not only does he save girls, he also turns trash into treasure. He must be a hero sent from above. He looked at her with a strange expression, then sighed and waved his hand, saying that he was not a hero at all, but a simple guy who did not like the Fang family. She said her name, and asked what his name was. He introduced himself and explained the meaning of his name, then saw a rock flying at them in the side mirror and became very nervous, then jerked the steering wheel to the right and told the girl to hold on tight. She began to worry and asked what was going on, and then there was a crash next to the car. A huge boulder fell onto the road. Xiaoqi nervously turned around and saw a furious zombie of an unknown level on the road behind her, whose body was covered in rocks. The zombie picked up a rock and threw it up, then hit it with a bat. The protagonist quickly reacted and spun the steering wheel again, dodging the blow, and Xiaoqi said that this furious zombie was often seen wandering around the area. He exclaimed in displeasure, "Why didn't she tell him about this before?" She awkwardly touched her head and replied that she completely forgot about it, and he said that they needed to somehow get rid of this big guy. They would not be able to dodge flying rocks all the time. There are 2 paths ahead. Where should they go? She replied that he needed to go right. There was a normal road there, broken in places, so he should not speed too much. He asked, what was on the left? She replied that they definitely didn't need to go there. The road led to a canyon, but the bridge had recently collapsed. After her words, an idea came to his mind and he pressed the gas pedal, going left. Seeing this, she excitedly exclaimed that this was the wrong road. They would come to a broken bridge. He said with a gloomy expression that they would die together, and she began to nervously pull the door handle and scream, "Is he crazy? Let him open the door, she will leave." She again asked him to let her out, and he said with a grin that he promised to take her to the village, so he would not leave her halfway. At this moment, the furious zombie again threw several stones at them, but none of them hit the target, and the car had already approached the destroyed bridge. They drove onto the bridge and drove up to the very edge, which scared the girl very much, but MC grinned. He stretched his hand out of the window and touched the railing of the bridge, after which he used the ability to improve and the road was restored in an instant. They successfully drove across the bridge and Xiaoqi, looking out of the window, asked in surprise, "Can he do this too?" Suddenly he abruptly hit the brakes, forcing the car to turn around and stop. Seeing the furious zombie running towards her, she grabbed her head and told him to go. What was he up to again? At this time, he stuck his hand out of the window and waved at the zombie, telling him to come to him. The monster responded by throwing a rock into the air and then swung the bat, but an instant before the blow, he suddenly lost his footing and fell straight into the canyon along with the debris of the bridge. It turns out that Yang Jing used his new deterioration skill and thus destroyed the bridge again. The system reported that the point processing was complete. He gained 1 level point. Xiaoqi was momentarily speechless and asked in confusion, did he kill him with this? He replied that he had not been given any experience. A furious zombie cannot be killed so easily. She did not understand what he was talking about, and he, pressing the gas again, said that they needed to speed up, that zombie might crawl out soon. She replied that this was unlikely to happen. All the furious zombies in the area have their own territories. This allows them to avoid them while searching for resources. MC asked if the Fang family was taking all of their resources. She replied that the Fang family's mercenary corps would take everything, but the forces directly under their control would leave them with 20%. He exclaimed that this was ridiculous. They were just taking 80%. She leaned back tiredly and closed her eyes, replying that in exchange, their family would send people to protect the village's surroundings from zombies. After all, they had confiscated most of their weapons, so they couldn't defend themselves anymore. Yang Jing asked, so they took their things and then said they would protect them? Although he wasn't surprised that their family would do such a thing. On the way, 2 cars were driving towards them, and Xiaoqi noticed this, leaned forward and excitedly said that it was the Fang family's motorcade. Their cars passed each other and at that moment, MC met Fang Su's gaze. Noticing how he was looking at him with disgust, Fang Su looked out the window and shouted curses after them, then turned to the driver and exclaimed in displeasure for that idiot staring at him. Let him turn around and follow him. Olsen, the leader of the 10th Resource Team Guards, said that today they still need to collect resources from several villages. She saw no need to make such a detour. Besides, in the 10 years since the apocalypse, all the decent cars had already been taken to the Dawn City. If someone could afford to drive such a car in the outer zone, he would have to be of high birth. He asked in displeasure, was she still going to teach him? She replied that she had no intention of doing so. She just wanted to remind him that if they returned to the city too late, he would be late for his date with that celebrity girl. He suddenly remembered this and happily said that then they needed to go to the next village as soon as possible. The girl looked out the window and thought that he was an idiot, and at that time, Yang Sheng's car pulled up to a village whose residents lived in containers. The village headman heard a sound outside and looked out of the container, and then Xiaoqi jumped out of the car and happily waved her hand at him. He was very happy to see her, and the other villagers followed him out of the containers. The old man approached his granddaughter and said with tears in his eyes that they had gone out to look for a new place to park a few weeks ago. He thought she was dead. She also cried and said that she was fine, but the Fong family had killed Xing. She pointed to Yang Jing, who had gotten out of the car, and said that she was able to return home thanks to him. She promised him a decent reward if he brought her here. They do have a few treasures in their stash, right? Let her give them to him. The protagonist waved to the old man, who whispered in his granddaughter's ear that the Fong family's resource team had just passed by and that they no longer had any stash. Yang Jing heard this, and then Xiuqi came up to him and awkwardly said that it looked like they couldn't pay him as she had promised. Maybe they could come to some other agreement. He opened the car door and replied that everything was fine, he had completed his task anyway. The system reported that the escort mission had been completed and 2 level points had been earned. Before getting into the car, he asked her to tell him where the zombies were nearby, and she pointed to the side, saying that there was a whole horde of zombies within a half-hour's walk in the mountains. Although there were also a couple of troublesome furious zombies living there, it would be dangerous to go alone. He suddenly approached her and asked her to leave the extermination of the zombies to him, which surprised her, and she recoiled back, after which she embarrassedly looked away and awkwardly asked him to help get rid of the zombies in those mountains. The system immediately gave him a quest with a reward of 2 level points, and he thought with a smile that he had guessed about it. The quests he gets like this appear in the system. After that, he got into the car and drove away, and the girl looked after him and thought with a smile that she didn't know why, but he seemed like a reliable guy. Her grandfather approached her and asked her with a smile for his name, and she asked what happened to his memory. She had just said that his name was Yang Jing. He replied that he was asking what his great-grandson's name would be. Because of these words, Xiuqi became embarrassed and ran away, exclaiming, "Why was he bringing this up here?" He became worried and asked in surprise, had she really already thought of a name? He turned his gaze to the departing sports car and said that this guy had plenty of courage, he really did go alone. Even the guards wouldn't risk messing with the creature in those mountains. Soon he arrived at his destination and leveled up by spending 1 point. His stats increased to level 5 along with his level, and he now had access to a new skill called Game Build. This is a passive skill that will display levels of targets above their heads, and injuries will cause their health bar to decrease. When their health drops below 20%, their movement speed will be reduced. MC looked at the system window and thought that he could still be injured, which meant zombie bites and scratches would still affect him. Resistance to other attacks probably meant resistance to zombie poison. It was unclear when this stat would be unlocked. Suddenly he stopped when he noticed level 2 zombies coming out from behind the trees. He immediately pulled out a knife and then rushed forward, cutting down all the enemies in his path, and the system reported that the experience bar was full. He received 1 point. He currently had 3 points available. He decided to upgrade the superior pistol to the ancient shooter's pistol and improved his stats again by receiving the ricochet shooting skill. He took out the upgraded gun, and at that very moment a sharp spear suddenly flew at him. He noticed it in time and blocked the blow, but dropped the knife from his hands. He quickly caught it, and, looking at his opponent, thought that it was such a strong blow. There was a girl with an athletic build standing nearby. It was a level 5 furious zombie named Gloria. MC got nervous and thought that this was the first time he saw a furious zombie with a name. She looked very strong. The zombie girl twirled the spear in her hand, and then swung and threw it at him. He managed to jump aside in time, and the spear only wounded his cheek, and then pierced the tree trunk behind him and punched a hole in it, and the tip of the point came out on the other side. Yang Jing used a firearm at this time, but she covered her head with her hands, protecting herself from the bullets. Suddenly she looked down at her hands in alarm and saw holes there, after which she rushed forward, starting to avoid his bullets. She hid behind a tree trunk and MC thought that at first she underestimated the power of his gun and was not going to dodge, but as soon as she realized the danger, she immediately hid. She hid behind the tree because she knew that his bullets would not penetrate it. It is obvious that she is intelligent. She is not fighting on pure instincts. This is very different from what the Fong family said. Suddenly a spear flew out from behind the tree trunk, and he exclaimed in surprise, "She threw it crookedly?" He immediately put a knife in front of himself to defend himself, but the spear broke it and pierced his stomach, causing him to be thrown back and he hit the tree. This attack took away 30 points of health from him, and then he pulled the spear out of his body, and Gloria at this time prepared to throw again. Noticing this, the protagonist jumped to the side and ran somewhere, but the zombie threw a spear in the direction of his movement. He realized that she even took his movement into account and thought that she was so strong, but a thrown spear cannot change direction on its own. He immediately jumped to the side, dodging the spear, and then fired a gun at a tree and the bullet ricocheted off several branches, flying straight into her. He saw a splash of blood, he rushed to the tree and thought, did he hit her? As soon as he got closer, he stretched his hand with a gun forward, going to shoot again, but seeing only a bloody trail on the ground, he realized that she had escaped. Deciding to track her down, he followed the bloody trail and soon reached a cave, thinking that this seemed to be her lair. He went inside and realized that the blood stains led deeper into the cave. When he reached a dead end, he saw a photo frame, children's shoes and a medal on a stone. He looked at these things carefully, and then looked at the photo of Gloria, who was still alive, standing next to the child, and next to it was the inscription, "Olympic medalist, gold medalist." He thought, why would an enraged zombie keep such things in a cave? Could she still have memories from when she was a human? At that very moment, Gloria appeared behind him and threw a spear again, but he noticed it in time and pulled out a gun, shooting. After that, they clashed in battle. MC fired bullets at her, and she furiously swung the spear. With each collision, dust and stone fragments rose into the air. The moment Gloria attacked him in a jump, and he pointed a gun at her, they both grabbed each other's hands and froze, applying more strength. The enraged zombie gritted her teeth, and her eyes sparkled. Yang Zheng thought, why did it only get worse after the shot? Is it because he was holding that frame? Suddenly, a child's voice was heard outside, calling for his mother. This surprised him, and Gloria seemed to remember something and became scared. She immediately abandoned her opponent, and rushed to the exit of the cave, and he ran after her, not taking his sights off her. Somewhere in the forest in the middle of a clearing, there was a car with a cage covered with cloth. Gloria ran closer and from the cage she heard a boy's voice calling her mother and she, holding out her hand to the child, smiled widely, and then the car suddenly jerked forward and she became scared, after which she ran after it. Time passed, the Fong family's motorcade ended up in the village and the soldiers pointed their guns at the residents. Fan Su approached the village headman and nervously said that he was asking for the last time. Where is the idiot who stole his sports car? Xiaoqi pursed her lips in displeasure and frowned, thinking that he had no shame or conscience. He spoke as if the car he himself drove had not been stolen from someone else. Fan Su began to lose patience and gritted his teeth, saying that he was already on edge because his date with that girl had fallen through, and now they, the scum, were covering for that idiot. At that moment, a car with a cage drove up to them and he, noticing it, said that they were just in time. He touched the cloth and told the villagers that he was about to show them something cool. After saying this, he threw the cloth off the cage, revealing two zombies sitting inside. Xiaoqi exclaimed in surprise, "Isn't this the same furious zombie that attacked their village last time?" Fan Su confirmed her words and said to the others with displeasure that if they still weren't in the mood to talk, he would throw this pink-haired girl into the zombie cage to be eaten. The others became silent and nervous, not knowing what to do, and he took out a walkie-talkie and told the sniper to shoot if anyone dared to move. Meanwhile, the sniper was unconscious, and a displeased voice of a guy came from his walkie-talkie, telling him to answer if he heard it. Yang Jing took out a spear from the soldier's body, then took his position and said with displeasure that he used the maternal instinct left in this furious zombie to control her and force her to attack the village. And then rob the villagers while hiding behind their protection. What a disgusting plan. Meanwhile, one of the soldiers pushed Xiaoqi towards the cage, telling her to quickly get inside. If she was stupid, he would immediately shoot her. At the same moment, a bullet pierced his head and his corpse fell to the ground. The others became worried, and Fan Su hid behind the van, after which the soldiers opened fire, but Yang Jing immediately shot them. Fan Su at this time ran to his car and shouted, "What is this sniper doing? How did he manage to illuminate his location so quickly?" The protagonist, meanwhile, aimed at him and was about to pull the trigger, but suddenly noticed a missile flying at him and got scared, and then jumped down from the cliff and an explosion was heard behind him. While he was sliding down the slope, he fired towards the car and knocked off the side mirror, from which Fang Su covered his ears in fear and told the driver to be faster. They rushed forward along the mountain road, and MC began to shoot at them. Meanwhile, a beep was heard from Fang Su's bracelet, and a warning appeared that the target was too far away. Seeing this, he became very excited and cursed loudly, exclaiming that the bomb would soon go off in that small zombie. There were 5 seconds left for the bomb to activate, and at that time, the little zombie boy touched his mother's face and called out to her with a smile, after which his body was torn to pieces, splashing Gloria with blood. She froze in shock, and as soon as she realized what had happened, she opened her second eye, burning with rage. Due to the overwhelming emotions, she clenched her teeth and began to breathe heavily, then broke out of the cage and ran after the car. With the help of her second eye, she saw the location of it, and then summoned a sparkling spear and swung it. She threw the weapon forward with all her might, and it flew straight to its target, bending around the cliff. Fan Su, meanwhile, thought that he didn't care about the small zombie, but he felt sorry to lose Gloria. She was such a convenient tool. He suddenly noticed movement in the rearview mirror and realized that something was flying there, and when he saw the spear, he was very scared, after which there was an explosion and a cloud of black smoke rose. The spear flew out of the cloud and fell into the hands of Yang Jing, who was nearby at the time of the explosion. Looking at the car, he realized how strong the furious zombie really was and thought that during their fight she even held back. She was angry because he blew up that little zombie and killed him. Suddenly he felt movement, and then turned around and pointed the rifle at Gloria. He became nervous and thought, when did she manage to get behind him? If she wanted to kill him, he would already be dead. She stretched out her hand forward and he broke out in a cold sweat from fear, and thoughts were spinning in his head about whether he could hurt her. Contrary to his expectations, the zombie pointed the barrel of the rifle at her head and asked him to kill her, which surprised him greatly. She summoned her spear and asked him to take revenge on them for everything, after which he stretched out his hand forward and threw the weapon at him. The moment the tip of the spear was very close to his face, he nervously pulled the trigger, shooting her in the head, and then thought, so she was trying to force him to shoot? He looked at her disappearing body, and said that he would remember her words and make them pay for what they did to them. The system reported that the task was complete. The ancient shooter's pistol can be improved. For completing the task and destroying the enraged zombie, he received 6 level points, as well as Gloria's uncleaned eyeball. From now on, he has the abilities of a clairvoyant. His vision is able to pierce most objects. 1 level point is required to cleanse the zombie's poison. He also received Gloria's unclean muscles. This significantly strengthens his own muscles, especially when performing throws. It takes 1 level point to clear zombie poison. He also received the lightning fire spear Gloria. It adds flame damage when attacking. It has high penetration and also allows you to use the deadly throw skill. Using all your strength for a deadly attack, the user can deal fire damage over an area. Cooldown 1 hour. MC was glad that he got quite a lot of things this time, and then he returned to the village and examined the weapons of the Fang people together with Shiochi. He said that he had already taken everything he needed. He was leaving the rest of the weapons in the car with them. Now they can stand up for themselves. He headed to his sports car and she asked if he was thinking about staying here and living with them. He replied that he would like to, but the last time such thoughts came to his mind, it all ended with him almost being burned on a tree. If he does nothing, he is afraid that in a couple of days the problems themselves will find him. He got into the car and hit the road, saying that they might see each other again, and she shouted after him that he would definitely achieve his goal. The protagonist confidently looked at the road and said that the next stop was Dawn City. He stepped on the gas, but when he drove up to the bridge, he looked at the bottom of the canyon and said that he forgot about this handsome man below. The furious stone zombie remained alive after the fall and was now wandering below. Yang Jing spent level points on cleaning the items dropped by Gloria, and also upgraded the firearm to the legendary John pistol, spending 4 points. He increased the characteristics of the pistol and received the fixation skill, as well as the special skill instant shooting. Having equipped the new items, He aimed and decided to finish off the furious zombie with one spear throw, but suddenly noticed movement to the side and thought that something was approaching the zombie at high speed. Suddenly a bright flash pierced the zombie. One of the leaders of the 10th security team, Wu Fengzhang, easily defeated him and put his foot on his head, saying that he was trash, no pleasure in killing. He took out his walkie-talkie and exclaimed, "What kind of idiot said that the local monster was strong? He rushed here just to kill him with one blow? A complete nonentity." Suddenly his walkie-talkie flew out of his hands. It turned out that the furious zombie did not die and grabbed his leg, then threw him into the wall. The system informed him that the main body was unconscious, multiple fractures and internal bleeding. Activation of self-healing from poison begins. Damage level is 60%. At this time, Yang Jing thought that his blow was impressive, but the zombie covered its neck with a stone, which greatly reduced the damage. Meanwhile, the furious zombie threw a rock into the air and swung his bat to hit the soldier, but suddenly a spear flew into his head and exploded on impact. Such a blow smashed the rock on his face, and MC, noticing this, thought that this was his chance. He immediately aimed his sniper rifle and fired a bullet at the monster's head, and then jumped down and started shooting at it from all sides. In the end, he destroyed the zombie and got 3 points for this. At the same moment, Fengzhang woke up. He suddenly opened his eyes and excitedly exclaimed in his mind, "What happened?" Seeing the lying zombie, he thought, "Is he already dead? Did that kid kill him? He is wearing a protective vest of the security team members, but he does not see any weapons. And he does not feel any necrotic energy from it. He is sure that he is not a zombie soldier like them. It is impossible that a simple guy could kill a furious zombie with his bare hands. That counterattack was probably his dying breath. He was sure that his punch had destroyed his brain stem. That was it." MC noticed that he had woken up and thought that since he wasn't dead, it seemed like he was a zombie soldier. Fengzhang walked up to him and asked if he was also from their team. Why hadn't he seen him before? Let him show his documents. Yang Jing used the enhancement on the normal documents and got a universal passport by spending 1 point. He showed him the document that had his photo on it and said that he was from the 10th security team of the Dawn City Outer Zone, and his number was 527. Fengzhang looked at it and said that the personal number was too high. He wasn't new to the team at all? He confirmed his words and the man patted his shoulder, telling him not to slack off. Someday, he too would be able to take down a rampaging zombie so easily. He waved his hand and said that today was his lucky day. He could return to the city in his luxury car. After that they climbed out of the canyon and set off on their way. There were banners advertising a cottage for sale on the way to the city, and Yang Jing thought that it was much easier to get into the Fong family than he thought. Fengzhang said that only leaders can have such a car. Ordinary team members can only get a broken bike. MC said in his mind that, to be honest, his car is not fit to hold a candle to his rusty bucket, and he continued, saying that if he wants to go higher, he will have to kill more zombies and do more tasks. When he goes high enough, he can apply to be converted into a zombie soldier. After that, he will be as cool as him. Now he was level 5 and the protagonist thought, is being a leader really that good? Then, if he uses the remaining points and raises himself 2 more levels, will he be able to fly to the top? Soon they reached the city gate and Fengzhang notified him about it. There were weapons on the top of the wall and several soldiers watching the surroundings. The gate opened and they drove inside, and MC looked out the windows and looked up, asking, "Is there even a phalanx installed? Have the furious zombies learned to fly yet?" He replied that not only can they fly, some can swim faster than submarines, and others can dodge bullets. He called him a rookie and told him not to wet his pants when he meets one. The rookies, recruited from outside, have never been to Dawn City, but he will soon get used to it. The car drove into a warehouse and one of the soldiers inside exclaimed that the leader is back. A guy named Baozi approached him and asked how it went. Was that furious zombie he was talking about able to challenge him? He waved his hand and replied that he died in 1 hit. There is nothing to even discuss. He scratched his head in confusion and replied that such a thing was impossible. After all, he was on the same level as the prize winner Gloria. Speaking of which, Gloria, who killed the previous leader, was herself recently killed by someone. Could it be that the leader of another team did this? Although none of the other teams reported killing her. Yang Jing got out of the car and Nan Yu, whose attention he attracted, asked who this handsome guy was. She was seeing him for the first time here. Fengzhang pointed at him and said that he forgot to introduce him. This was a newcomer from outside Yang Jing. After that, He introduced the newcomer to Baozi. He is in charge of logistics. The beauty next to him is the third most powerful among the team members and a zombie soldier, just like him. He turned to Baozi and said that he was leaving the newcomer to him, and he put his hand on Yang Zheng's back and led him to the exit, telling him not to worry, he knows how to handle newcomers. After that, he asked Yang Zheng if he had any connections with the leaders. He replied that it was not so, and he asked if he had a patron in the city then. Feng Zhang watched them go, and Nanyu walked up to him, saying that he was such a sweet boy, she even felt sorry for him. He just sighed in response, and the soldiers behind him began to bet that the newbie would not survive even 3 days. Someone bet on a week, and one of them exclaimed in surprise that he was overestimating him, 4 days at most. His comrade bet that he would survive for 5 days, and Baozi meanwhile gave the MC a tour. They passed a huge house and he said that this was the Fang family's villa, only team leaders were allowed to live here. They came to a multi-story building and he said that this building was where ordinary team members lived. It was crowded and cramped. They called this house a pigeon coop. Yang Jing said that it looked much more decent than the places he had lived before. At least they had a roof over their heads. The guy let out a laugh and asked what he had come up with there. He was not old enough to live in such conditions. He pointed to the side with a smile and said that he would live there. The protagonist saw a small house made of clay and hay in front of him and exclaimed indignantly, "Isn't that too much? Why is he putting him up here? There are cottages here." Baozi said that he must have been tricked into this since he didn't know anything. New soldiers of the Dawn City must take part in this election on the second day. And the survival rate is never higher than 10%. So why would they put newbies who only have 2 days to live in a cottage? MC sat on the steps of his new house, and the guy said that the meeting was tomorrow in the northern part of the city at 8 a.m. He probably didn't even have a watch, but that was okay, let him listen to his feelings. He couldn't be late or skip school, otherwise they would track him down and shoot him. Before leaving, he took one last look at him and thought that he looked like a coward. He was probably scared by now. He was absolutely sure that he wouldn't last another hour tomorrow. At this time, Yang Jing thought with a gloomy expression that it was getting more and more interesting. A new day had arrived. Yang Jing arrived at the assembly on time, and all the newcomers lined up in 2 rows. Feng Zhang, who was standing in front of them, introduced himself and said that today he would be the judge for the entrance examination for newcomers. Their task would be to clear the building behind him of zombies. He pointed his finger at the high-rise building and said that one person should occupy 1 floor. If they completed the task and survived, they would pass the examination. Also, the 3 people who got rid of all the zombies first would have a chance to be recommended for the Elite Zombie Extermination Squad, the Anti-Furious Zombie Squad. A guy named Zhang Ye, who belonged to the famous Eternal Water Corporation, took notice of Yang Jing and told his friend to just take a look at this idiot. Did he really not bring a weapon with him? Was he planning on spitting at the zombies until they choked? His friend asked, "Isn't that great? That way he would have one less competitor." Meanwhile, Yang Jing thought that the selection test was just like the Fang family. Such heartlessness was quite in keeping with their style, sending newbies to the training ground without basic training and equipment. And these 2 behind him brought everything with them. He looked at the system window with the available zombie extermination mission. He needed to get rid of all the zombies on the floor entrusted to him, and also get rid of all the rampaging zombies in the building. He would get 3 points as a reward. After reading the mission conditions, he thought that it looked like Feng Zhang had something in store for them. Soon the test began. The frightened soldiers started running from the zombies and telling them not to come closer, and some were killed. The girl in the observation room said that 7 people had been killed so far, 13 remained. Feng Zhang looked at the monitors and said that there was not a single fighter among the rookies. It was good that he had secretly smuggled those furious zombies in there. It looked like everyone except young Master Zhang, the protege of their superiors, would be killed today. Meanwhile, Zhang Ye shot the zombie running at him and sighed in relief, saying that he had finally finished. That last zombie must have been furious, he barely managed to kill her. He turned around with a smile, saying that the floor was cleared, and seeing that the corpses had already evaporated, he said with annoyance that he wanted to count how many he had killed. He took out a walkie-talkie and turned to Feng Zhang, asking, "He was in first place, right?" He hesitantly replied that he had better go upstairs. After that, Zhang Ye reached the stairs and started to climb up, asking dissatisfiedly, "What does this mean? Is there really someone better than him? But that can't be, he found out everything about this year's newcomers, they are weak in everything. Besides, he invested his own money in buying equipment for this test. He was trained by their family's bodyguards. He saw several people crowded in the passageway and thought, is this a newcomer from other floors? Why are they all standing in the middle of the road? He walked up to them and asked, have they already enrolled their floors? The guy replied that this was not the case, and he wanted to ask why they were here, but he did not let him do so and pointed his finger forward, saying that it was because this guy killed all the zombies from the next 10 floors. Janya turned his gaze deep into the corridor and suddenly became very nervous when he saw a pile of zombie corpses, on one of which Yang Jing was sitting. He thought, is he not mistaken? There are even a couple of furious zombies in this pile? The protagonist meanwhile received 2 points for killing zombies, now he has 4 available. The young master thought that the corpses had not yet had time to evaporate, which means that he killed them a few minutes ago. He did all this with his bare hands? His face distorted with shock, and Feng Zhang meanwhile furiously punched the wall and approached the monitor in which Yang Jing was visible, thinking that it seems that he was wrong about him. Now he admits that he has a third of his strength. But how will he cope with this? He turned to the girl and ordered her to release that thing, and she agreed. Immediately after that, someone's loud scream was heard outside the building. Yang Jing turned his gaze to the window and noticed a silhouette flying into it, after which the monster pierced the glass with its claws and grabbed him, rushing forward. It crashed through the wall of the corridor with a roar and burst into the room, demolishing everything in its path. Feng Zhang said that he was so sorry that even though he was strong enough to fight the zombies, his opponent was the son of the head of one of the 3 largest corporations in Dawn City. No matter how strong he is, the first one must be young Master Zhang. In his mind, he added that it was up to young Master to become the team leader. Suddenly, what he saw on the monitor surprised him greatly. Yang Jing was unharmed and was currently holding back a level 4 elite raging zombie. Feng Zhang thought he was able to block its attack. This is incredible. But there is one more thing. At this moment, the raging zombie opened its mouth wide and screamed loudly, releasing sound waves that made Yang Jing feel uneasy. He immediately distanced himself from the enemy and ran out of the room, after which he vomited blood and thought that this monster would be easy to deal with because its strength and speed were not particularly impressive, but he never imagined that it would have such an ability. He turned to look at young Master and saw that he was rummaging through his pockets with his hand. Janya took out his headphones from his pocket and thought that he now understood why Feng Zhang told him to get a pair of noise-canceling headphones yesterday. It was all because of the monster. Suddenly, Yang Jing snatched the headphones from him and shot them into the air, saying that he would borrow them from him for a while, and he excitedly asked him to wait. The next moment, the protagonist disappeared, leaving him confused, and Feng Zhang smirked and said that he was naive. These things can work if he is at a distance. And if he gets hit at close range, his head will just burst. Besides, automatic noise-canceling headphones are not very effective against high-frequency sounds. But what is with his speed? Why does it feel like it is not inferior to his slashing dash? Meanwhile, the furious zombie flew out of the building and began to climb up. At one point he stopped and screamed again using echolocation. With this, he noticed Yang Jing standing on the roof, after which he suddenly flapped his wings and rushed upward. MC noticed this, and the monster decided to get close to him unnoticed. He ended up behind him and looked out from behind the shelter with a smile, after which he screamed loudly, from which all the windows in the building shattered into small pieces. Cracks appeared along the walls of the building itself, the supports broke and it collapsed, and Zhanya, who managed to run out in time thanks to Feng Zhang, told him that he almost died there. It's good that he saved him. The building collapsed, that guy must be definitely dead. He agreed with him and said that if he had been closer, he wouldn't have come out, especially under this garbage. He took out his phone and switched to the drone camera to see what was happening on the roof now. He saw only an enraged monster and a huge dent from his blow, after which he sighed with relief and made sure that he was definitely dead. Suddenly the zombie felt someone's presence. He turned around and a moment later something heavy flew into his head, causing him to be thrown back and hit the floor. Immediately after that, Yang Jing landed next to him with a thud and, seeing a dent on the monster's head, asked if he had a layer of impenetrable steel there. He put his foot on his head and said that it was no wonder that 12.7mm bullets could not penetrate it. The furious zombie smirked in response, and then Yang Jing pointed the barrel of a sniper rifle at his head and asked if he wanted to try it. This made the monster very nervous, and then there was an explosion. The system reported that the zombie was destroyed. He received 2 points as a reward. Now he has 3 available. Seeing this with the help of a drone, Feng Zhang exclaimed in surprise that he killed him, and Zhang Ye said that it was so cruel. He blew his head off and still continues to reload. The team leader cursed in his mind and thought, how could that guy dodge the zombies' deafening attack so quickly? He was in the killing range, why wasn't he injured at all? Could it be because of the headphones? But that's impossible, even if he was wearing good noise-canceling headphones, he was vulnerable during the attack. And where did he get those headphones anyway? Wasn't he wearing in-ear headphones? He grabbed his head and exclaimed, what the hell is going on here? He was confused. Zhang Ye looked at the top of the building at this time, and then the protagonist appeared behind him and he became nervous, wondering why he felt a shiver down his spine. He plucked up the courage to turn around and Yang Jing handed him the headphones with a gloomy expression, saying that he was giving them back to him, he even improved them. Now they are over-ear modified noise-canceling headphones. When turned on, it suppresses 90% of full-range noise. Zhang Ye smiled nervously and waved his hands, saying that he was too polite. His headphones were in-ear headphones, and these over-ear headphones were obviously not his. Time passed, MC was standing outside the cafe and waiting for someone. Someone called him brother, and he saw Baozi nearby, standing next to a moped, who said with an awkward smile that this was all he could get, their crew was too poor. Besides, there were 2 captains' cars or an armored personnel carrier left. He handed him the phone and said that this was an exception to the rule for him. Before this, only the captain, the deputy captain, and he could use the phone. The keys to the dorm and pocket money were in the moped. He didn't have to live in a straw house anymore. MC thought that this guy was pompous yesterday, and today he calls him brother, he seems like a complete idiot. After that, he got on the moped and asked, does he know where the Fong family building is? He heard it was very impressive, so he wanted to see it. He replied that it was in the center of the city. It was the tallest building surrounded by open space. His face became serious, and he asked him not to say later that he didn't warn him. Let him stay away from their family's building, otherwise they would perceive him as a threat and shoot him. Yang Jing asked in surprise, is the security level there that high? He replied that 5 years ago, the city lord Fang Mingbo died, and his son Fan Xiao, after coming to power, significantly increased the security level. Let him be careful. After that, the protagonist set off on a journey, and while he was driving, he thought that this time he should take resources for pumping. He also needs to know the fighting strength of the Fang family. Only by knowing himself and the enemy can he win. In fact, during the fight with Gloria, he tried to improve it, wanted to turn it into fighting force, but the system said that first he needed to raise his level to 10th and complete the loyalty quest. After reaching level 5, he realized that killing zombies no longer gives experience, even the experience for killing normal ones has decreased significantly. So he needs to get information about high-level zombies. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to join the rebels. He passed by a store, but suddenly the name caught his attention and he drove back, admiring the sign. He went inside, saying that this place is too good to miss, and saw a lot of weapons with bullets inside. He looked at it carefully, and thought that these are the same weapons that can't be obtained outside the city. After that, his body trembled with delight, and he thought that this is so cool, this is a real paradise for men. If he buys a lot of heavy weapons and improves this, he can take his combat ability to a new level. He walked up to the counter with a big smile and told the seller that he wants all the weapons of large caliber and power. He slammed his finger on the table and said that he wants everything lying here within 1 minute. The seller silently adjusted his glasses, then threw him out of the store and shouted at him that with so much money in his pocket, he still dared to show off. Let him never set eyes on him again. Having received a blow to the head, MC lay down on the road and said that this was such a great deal. Time passed, he looked at the new weapon in his hands, thinking that he had been in the city for too long, he had already lost track of prices. It's good that uncle at least sold him this. Although the silencer cannot completely suppress the sound, however, it can at least shoot from afar without attracting the attention of opponents. He took out his binoculars and looked towards the Fong family building. There were a lot of military equipment on the platform below, and zombie soldiers above level 6 stood on the roofs, guarding the territory. He thought that it turns out that any small soldier would be higher than the vice captain of the guard. No wonder why the Fong family has ruled Shuguang City for so long. He put a balaclava on his face, took off his backpack, then raised his gun and aimed, saying that he can't go back with his bare hands. After that, he opened fire. Using teleportation to the place of the bullet, he reached the site where the equipment was located and touched the plane to improve it, but the system said that he can't do it. First he needs to reach level 15. The main character decided to check the tank, and this time the system said that first he needs to reach level 10. He thought that since he was 2 levels short, he just needed to lure a couple of zombies, and then he punched the tank body and one of the guards heard it. Yang Jing liked that he noticed it, and then he took out his weapon and thought that he should change his position. He didn't want to get beaten up right next to the Fang family building. He shot towards the forest and teleported to the bullet's location, after which a zombie soldier appeared next to him in an instant. Noticing this, Yang Jing turned around and took out a knife to block the blow, but the zombie broke it, and he had to increase the distance between them. He thought that he was so fast, he didn't expect that it would outrun his shot. If he saved even one more point, he would lose his life. He took out the glorious spear and increased his level to 8, after which an aura of power surrounded him. His opponent immediately rushed to attack, raising his sword above his head, and he held his spear in front of him to defend himself from the blow, and then swung it, hitting the soldier's helmet. There was a scratch on his helmet, and he thought that the armor was pretty strong, after which they began to strike each other many times. At one point, MC twirled the spear in his hand, and then delivered a powerful blow that made a crack in the opponent's helmet, showing his terrifying face. Yang Jing felt uneasy and thought that earlier the fan-like zombie soldier said that they were modified humans. But the breath coming from under this helmet was definitely an ordinary zombie. He threw the spear forward and pierced the zombie's head, and the system reported the destruction of the monster and his reward of 1 point. He was glad that he was given a lot of experience for this zombie, and then suddenly 2 guards of the 7th and 8th levels appeared behind him. MC kicked the fallen enemy's sword, then threw it up and grabbed it with his hand, then turned around and blocked the attacks. Their swords slid along his blade and it trembled from this, and Yang Jing thought that these two were much stronger, his fingers even went numb. After the attack, they stopped, waiting for his next move, and as soon as they saw that he was pulling out a gun, one of them immediately rushed to attack, but he blocked the blow. The second guard at this time pounced on him from the other side, but he pointed the gun at him and shot him in the head, saying that it would not kill him, but at least slow him down. This would give him some time to concentrate on one thing. Having caught a bullet in the head, the guard fell to the ground, and the second one swung his leg at this time. Yang Jing quickly reacted and released the gun from his hands, catching the enemy's leg near his face, then kneed him in the head, pinning him to the ground. He took the gun, and while the zombie was still recovering from the blow, he put the barrel to the back of its head and fired several times. The system reported that for killing the zombie guard, he received 1 point, a set of steel armor, a Kevlar lining, and a zombie soldier's knife. He thought that this set of steel armor probably weighed about 50 kilograms. These zombies were lucky that they could still be mobile in combat. He upgraded himself to level 10, spending all the available points, and decided that now he needed to test out his new skills. The system reported receiving a new skill called Zombie Enslavement. When he reduces a zombie's health to 20% or less, he can use an upgrade point to make it his subordinate. The skill cannot be used on a target with a higher level than his own. When the remaining zombie recovered from the blow, it immediately attacked, lunging forward with a sword, but MC moved his body to the side in time and dodged the blow, after which he rushed forward, delivering a powerful blow from which he did not die, but noticeably weakened. The system reported that this zombie had 18% health, he could enslave it. Immediately after that, another wave of zombie guards arrived. Noticing them, he said that he was worried that he would not have enough points, and thanked them for their hospitality, after which they all rushed to attack and the sounds of heavy blows began to be heard in the forest. In the end, he killed the zombies that had just arrived and received 7 points for this, and then used a new enslavement skill on a weakened zombie. The system reported that he received a level 9th guard zombie. The maximum number of subordinates has been reached. If he wants to enslave even more, then let him raise the level to 20. At the moment, he has 6 points available. He decided to finish and thought that he would make do with this guy for now and then change when he met a zombie soldier or a stronger normal zombie. Suddenly, he felt something that made him feel uneasy. He nervously turned around and saw a furious boss zombie behind him, the captain of the machine cavalry. He thought in surprise, if the cavalry uses horses, does this zombie ride a heavy machine? The boss zombie took out a heavy machine gun from his back and pointed it at him, which made him very nervous and exclaimed, "So that's what they meant by a heavy machine." After that, the monster opened fire. A hail of machine gun fire fell on Yang Jing, and he decided to escape. He fired his pistol towards the huge building, and as soon as the bullet hit the platform with armored vehicles, he teleported to its place and landed on the tank. He touched it and thought that he definitely wouldn't defeat this boss, but at least he would capture the tank. Later he will be able to place his friends there. The system reported that the main tank has been upgraded to a reinforced tank, adding 50% to the armor and firepower. He used 1 point when upgrading, and now he has 5 available. The protagonist looked toward the plane and thought that even if he used all the points to advance to level 15 and unlock the plane, he would not have enough points to upgrade and store it, so he would do it next time. Soon, a boss zombie arrived at the site, but the troublemaker was no longer there. Now, Yang Jing walked slowly along the forest road and thought that this time he came to Fang's house, bought a weapon, advanced to level 10, and also got a zombie guard and a soldier, and also upgraded the tank and got 5 points. This is not bad at all. His ability, which he received after killing Gloria, activated, and one of his eyes lit up, noticing something to the side. He immediately took out his gun and pointed it towards the bushes, displeasedly saying that he could see her through the tree. Let her come out. Nanyu came out from her hiding place and waved at him with a smile, saying that it was expected, he was always so considerate. He put away the gun and asked if she was keeping an eye on him. She replied that he was so smart, and he frowned suspiciously, asking how long she had been doing this. She smiled, put her hands on her waist, and told him not to look at her as if he was going to devour her. She came with good intentions. He didn't understand what she meant, and she said with a serious face that if he wanted to destroy the Fang family, then she would help him do it. He waved his hand and replied that he didn't understand what she was talking about. How could she say such a thing? I'll be a member of the security. Besides, if she wasn't satisfied with the Fang family, then she should go to Fang Xiao. Why would she drag him into this? She confidently replied that it was because she saw in him the hope of destroying the Fang family. After that, they moved under the bridge where the cemetery was located, and Yang Jing asked why she brought him here. She replied that it was because it was here that he could feel all her anger at the Fang family. The reason for her hatred was buried here. 10 years ago, when the zombie wave had just broken out, the Fang family took control of the city of Shuguang with their armed force. They soon plundered all the nearby cities. After that, the homeless who could not survive outside the city, in search of shelter, were forced to accept the Fang family's conditions. In addition to having to work every day for meager food, they were subjected to zombification experiments. Those who passed the test could become zombie soldiers and serve Shuguang, protecting the city from the zombies outside it. And those who showed good results would be promoted and given the opportunity to go to the city center to increase their social rating. They would no longer have to worry about food and sleep wherever they wanted. Yang Jing didn't understand what was going on and asked, "Isn't it good?" Her face darkened and she said that the Fang family hid the most important thing. It turns out that all those who were successfully zombified will not return to their previous state in the end. 5 years ago, her brother Nan Feng became a zombie soldier after Fang Xiao became the ruler of the city. He decided to become a soldier for the sole purpose of finding shelter inside the city for the two of them. He is very talented, he was not afraid of death and quickly rose through the ranks. He was about to join the guard, when the unexpected happened. Blood suddenly spurted out of his mouth, his whole body was covered in sweat, and began to change under the influence of the poison. His teeth became sharper, and many heads grew out from under his skin, which began to scream. In the end, the guards told her that her brother went berserk and attacked the people at headquarters. They had no choice but to kill him and give her his dog tags. She doesn't even have his ashes, they had to bury his dog tags here. MC activated the perspective skill to check this, and saw dog tags under the tombstone. He thought that all the dog tags usually come in pairs. There was only one, which means the second one remained on his body. If her brother was killed, the body would have decomposed quickly. Another dog tag hanging in the air? An idea suddenly came to his mind and the girl ran her hand over the tombstone, saying that she had been investigating all this time and found out what the Fang family had been hiding. Every zombie soldier, when he self-heals or uses an ability, is exposed to corpse poison. If the amount of poison is exceeded, the soldier turns into a full-fledged zombie. There is not a drop of humanity left in the shell. The Fang family somehow controls these zombies, turning them into pure killing machines. So if a soldier like her wants to rebel against the Fang family, she will be in a vicious loop. She broke the slab with her fingers in rage and said that the more resistance, the easier it is to turn into a zombie. If she becomes a full-fledged zombie, she will turn into their tool. Yang Jing asked if she was telling the truth, then why did he have hope of destroying them? She replied that ever since he passed the exam, she had been watching his every move. Even if she doesn't know how he gets stronger every time, he is not a zombie soldier. And it turns out that this way he can break the endless loop of zombie soldiers dying. These words surprised him, and soon a new day came. The city ruler, Fan Xiao, looked at the mountain scenery outside the window and said that these nasty people try to kill him every day. Do they really think he is in that huge building that looks like a target? This is just ridiculous. His subordinate walked up to him and asked who he was going to send to investigate yesterday's murder. He told him to assign this case to Olsen and asked where she was. He looked away and nervously said that she went to protect the city gate again. They say that a very violent zombie boss came from the north this time. The alert level was raised to A. Hearing this, the city ruler was very surprised, and in the meantime, a machine gun was firing at the target at the city gate. The huge worm skillfully dodged the bullets, diving underground and emerging again. Suddenly, the fire stopped and one of the soldiers excitedly exclaimed, "Why did the shooting stop?" His comrade reported that the maximum tilt angle was exceeded. Feng Zhang arrived at the scene and said that this thing was designed for air defense, so of course it was useless on the ground. The soldier greeted the commander, and he told them to leave it to him. He was quite good at ground combat. Meanwhile, the huge worm headed for the city gate, and the soldier called out to the commander and reported that it was penetrating the ground. His comrade said not to be afraid, it was about to hit a mine. Immediately after that, there was an explosion, and the bloody worm crawled out from underground, screaming loudly. At that moment, Feng Zhang took action. He rushed forward and cut the monster's body in half, after which its corpse fell next to him, and he told Olsen that as long as he continued to perform feats like today, he would quickly take the place of the commander. One of the soldiers said that it was so cool, he cut the huge boss in half with one blow. Another soldier said that this was the special skill of the same name of the commander Wu Fengzhang. It is said that before the end of the world, he often watched his father cut meat in a butcher's shop. His father could always clearly cut any piece of meat in half. After becoming a zombie soldier, the commander developed his skills based on this. At this time, Feng Zhang noticed that the worm's body began to grow together and became wary, after which he crouched down and placed his hand on the hilt of his sword, and then rushed forward, making a deep cut along the body of the worm. The severed piece fell apart in half, and the soldier said that this was the first time he saw such a ferocious sight. His comrade replied that he came later, it was normal. This kind is called zombie puppets, and they are usually transformed from high-level humanoid zombies, most of which do not have the ability to self-heal. Today was the first time he saw such fast self-healing. Feng Zhang meanwhile said that although he had no idea where the core was, but as long as it was cut, he would get to it. He jumped up and raised his sword above his head, but at the same time, a monster's mouth appeared next to him, and he turned a stunned gaze to his opponent, thinking, did the other half grow back so quickly? A moment later, a huge worm rushed forward, tearing off his left arm and leg, then swallowed it and began to climb the wall, which made the soldiers very nervous. The first thing the huge worm did was destroy the weapon, and the soldier who was nearby was very surprised and thought, was its goal to destroy the phalanx? After that, the worm crawled along the wall, destroying the rest of the weapons. The soldier who stood in his way opened fire on him, thinking that there was only one weapon left on the gate, they couldn't lose it. But the bullets couldn't penetrate the worm's thick body. It towered over the soldier, and he asked for help with tears in his eyes, after which something suddenly chopped off the worm's head. He looked at it in surprise, and seeing an axe in the air, he asked if it chopped off the boss. However, this axe was just as huge. After that, the axe spun in the air and fell, chopping the monster's body in half, and the soldier turned around to find out who threw it, and saw Olsen there. She, noticing his gaze, ordered him to give her his shotgun, and the monster at that time had already managed to recover and screamed loudly. Suddenly, 2 bullets hit his head. He felt it and turned to the commander of the 10th Guard, and the rest of the soldiers hid in the meantime. One of them asked why they had to hide here. His comrade replied that the commander said it was so that they wouldn't get hit by a stray bullet. His comrade exclaimed that the shotgun was useless against them, they just needed to bomb it. At that moment, the worm rushed to attack, and Olsen, glad that he was angry, jumped back, dodging the blow. After that, she used the ability of the shotgun, increasing it in size several times, and the worm froze in place. After that, she pulled the trigger and a huge pellet rushed out of the muzzle forward, smashing the monster's head into small pieces, and then rushed further along the wall. The recoil threw the shotgun up, and then it sharply decreased to its usual size, and the soldiers came out of hiding. After watching the monster's body dissolve, they both asked in shock what kind of gun it was. A gun of such a huge size, it's more like a shotgun. After the battle, Feng Zhang, whose limbs had already grown back, climbed the wall and the commander asked if he was injured. He left the commander's question unanswered and cursed in his mind when he saw that the boss was no longer there. This woman had deprived him of his combat merits again. Olsen's phone rang and she answered the call, and he asked her to listen to him. Sooner or later, her commander's chair would be his. She did not react to his words in any way and, hearing the voice on the phone, said that she was already on her way, and he got angry and exclaimed that she was ignoring him again. She was just an arrogant woman. Shortly after, Olsen arrived at the Fong family building and learned of the attack that had occurred at night. She wanted to check the CCTV footage, but the girl said that night, the footage from several cameras that recorded the intruder had disappeared. She pointed her finger at the monitor and said that only a photo of a masked bandit remained. Meanwhile, MC was somewhere in the forest, and he was level 14. Big cats surrounded him from all sides, and he said that they were so huge. They must be the puppets that Nanyu was talking about. One of the big cats roared loudly, but the protagonist did not react at all and froze in place, after which someone's blade flashed in front of his face. His zombie subordinate easily cut off the monster's head and he stepped aside, saying that he was leaving these beasts to him. The zombie gave him a thumbs up in response, obeying his order, and then Yang Jing went further into the forest. Firing a bullet forward, he teleported to a branch and remembered what happened 5 hours ago. Nanyu said that she managed to get the riot squad to postpone reporting on him. For now, he is not restricted by the Fong family army, and if he needs any information, he should ask her. He asked how the Fong family's combat rating is arranged. She replied that it is divided into ranks S, A, B, C, D, E, from high to low. Each rank is also divided into 3 smaller classes. For example, rank S is divided into S plus and S minus, and the rest are the same. Hearing this, MC thought about it. It seems like the ranking is a little more detailed. In that case, 2 identical ranks are slightly off. He asked, then what rank is Feng Nong? She replied that his normal combat strength is rank D+, the zombification level can reach B-. It rarely goes beyond these 2 marks, usually it can reach a high indicator, and even low. However, they need to strictly control the zombification time, otherwise they will easily turn into ordinary zombies. Of all the main squads, Olsen has the highest rank of plus, and her zombification level is unknown. This woman has such a strong resistance to corpse poison that she goes beyond all limits. Even the testing center could not figure out where her limit is. He asked, does that mean she is the strongest in the city? She replied that this was not the case at all. She was one of the top 3 out of 10, but it was said that there were also ordinary S ranks among Fang Zhao's guards. This was a closely guarded secret, and she was still trying to get more information. So this time, he would go fight the zombies. This would be his test of strength. At present, the protagonist looked at the scenery that opened up to him from the top of the tree, and thought about this test, after which he jumped into a huge hole in the middle of the forest, and found himself in a cave with many passages. He suddenly heard a sound and thought that it seemed like the sound of a drum kit was coming from the depths of the cave. He headed towards the source of the sound, and saw many skulls along the way. As soon as he reached the end, he saw a zombie boss playing the drums in front of him. Noticing the person in front of him, he stopped the game and asked, did he also come to listen to his concert? MC looked at him nervously, thinking that he, like Gloria, could talk. He immediately took out a machine gun and shot him, saying that he came for him, and then the zombie hit the drum with a bone and a second later Yang Jing was in a completely different place. He was standing near the stage in the middle of the crowd, who were shouting Lu Danhua's name, saying that they loved him. The protagonist was confused, thinking that this was the concert he missed 10 years ago. Is this an illusion? Suddenly Nanyu, standing next to him, raised his hand and asked with a smile, why is he frozen? Let him relax. He was a little taken aback to see her here, and then the zombie began to play the drums loudly, and this sound hypnotized Yang Jing. He happily raised his hands and sent the apocalypse to hell, saying that they needed to enjoy themselves. Olsen and Gloria, standing nearby, joined in the fun, and then Yang Jing began to move to the rhythm of the music. Xiaoqi, who was also present at the concert, began to dance briskly, and then the sound of the drums intensified. Time passed. Yang Jing wondered how long he had been dancing for. More than 10 hours? He was so tired, but as soon as he heard the drums, his body couldn't stop dancing. He suddenly remembered that he had headphones and took them out. His hands started dancing on their own, and in order to put on the headphones, he had to strain them, which made them shake. But when he was almost putting on the headphones, the music became louder and he, unable to hold his body, began to perform a breakdance, and someone from the crowd shouted that it was so cool. The MC cursed in his mind and thought that at this rate he would soon die. He reached out for the headphones, but it was so difficult for him that his eyes began to close. When he almost reached it, Gloria picked it up and crossed her arms over her chest in displeasure, saying that when he fought with her, he was much more alive. Why does he look like his kidneys have failed for a few days? Did he really work that hard? He exclaimed that he had fallen into an illusion and danced almost to death. Does she understand everything now? She was glad that he had finally come to his senses, and then handed him the headphones and said with a smile that he should save his strength for victory. Before taking revenge, let him help her, even if it was difficult, let him just do it. She put the headphones on him and he finally returned to reality. The zombie was standing above him at this time. He approached it, inhaling its scent and began to drool in anticipation of the upcoming meal, and then suddenly he felt the cold metal on his neck. Yang Jing pointed the gun at its head, then pulled the trigger and fired, from which the monster immediately died and began to evaporate. In order to rest, the protagonist sat down by the wall and looked at the gun with the thought that he was saved by Gloria. The tendons that were left behind actually had some consciousness. Suddenly he noticed movement off to the side. The zombie he had killed a minute ago had crawled out of the ground, and he stood up, exclaiming in surprise, "Where did another one come from? Did he think he had resurrected, or was it just a clone of himself?" He told the zombie that he had a lot of skills, after which the monster sat down at the drum set and swung it, and then hit the drum with all his might with a bone, causing everything in the cave to shake and the stones from the ceiling to fall, raising dust. Seeing that the man was no longer there, the zombie smirked, and then suddenly felt something and was surprised. He looked down and saw a blade sticking out of his chest, and then turned around. Behind him stood a subordinate zombie. He pulled a sword out of his body and swung it from top to bottom, cutting his body in half, and then burped back. MC, who was hiding behind a stone pillar at the time, peeked out from his hiding place and thought that even though the headphones had noise cancellation that cut out 90% of the noise, he could still hear a small sound. It was good that the intensity was not so high that he would fall into another illusion. He was afraid that this boss would use more clones. Then he needed to find him and deal the first blow. He used his ability and saw where the clones were hiding. He found the place where the zombie's real body was hiding among the rocks and called out to his subordinate, ordering him to deal with it. The zombie immediately rushed towards the pillar and climbed up it until it reached the ceiling, where sparks appeared from their blows. Then something fell from the ceiling. The zombie subordinate's head rolled to Yang Zheng's feet, and the monster walked out of its hiding place with a smile. MC became very nervous and looked up at him, thinking that this clone's breathing was completely different from the previous one. He remembered that when he was talking to Nan Yu, he asked what level this boss was, and she said that it was the kind that even Olsen was afraid to approach. He smiled nervously and asked, was she kidding? Was she telling him to go and kill a boss of this level? Thinking back, he realized that she wasn't kidding back then. She always had this attitude towards the rookie exam: only the strongest survive. He used 6 points and increased his level to 20, after which the system reported that the fighter upgrade was unlocked. He received a passive skill super discount. This greatly reduces the number of points needed to upgrade items. He also received a passive skill called hidden equipment. This allows him to hide unwanted equipment, including weapons, pendants, holsters, bulletproof vests, and the like. His physical strength is now greatly increased. Immediately after that, his opponent jumped down and clenched his hand into a fist. He wanted to hit Yang Jing, but he jumped to the side in time and instead he hit the ground. The protagonist meanwhile increased the distance between them, and immediately took out his weapon, starting to fire at him. But the bullets were nothing to the monster. He rushed towards him, covering his head with his hands, and then one of the bullets flew past him and Yang Jing teleported to the place it, ending up behind him. He took out a sniper rifle and, kneeling on one knee, fired several times. His bullets hit the zombie's torso and he nervously thought, did he miss him? But that can't be, he's sure he was aiming for the brain. Suddenly, some sound reached his ear and he realized that the sound of his fall was also an illusion. Even if the noise is only 10%, it still distracts him. His ears, eyes, even his hands feel it. Just 10% can make a huge difference in shooting accuracy. After healing his wound, the zombie looked at him with a smirk before quickly approaching him and lunging forward to strike, and MC burped back thinking that he was fast but he could still dodge. At that moment, the zombie snapped his fingers, distracting him again, causing him to miss the next strike, which landed on his chest. This caused Yangjing to be thrown back and hit the wall of the cave, and his weapon broke. He recovered and started to get back up, saying that he almost dodged it, but the sound stopped him. Also, his headphones broke in half. He looked up at the sign displayed above the monster, and thought that he still couldn't see what level he was. Was there any point in using the remaining 3 points to increase his level? It would be good to fix the headphones, but they won't be able to completely drown out the noise. As long as he's distracted by these people, he has no chance of winning. Suddenly, an idea came to his mind, related to the two halves of the headphones. At that very moment, the enemy's fist appeared in front of his face, but he reacted in time and moved his lower body to the side, and then a familiar sound was heard again. The zombie boss kicked him with all his might, throwing him into a nearby column, and he hit it with a crash. The monster then rushed towards him, and seeing that he was still there, stretched out his hand towards him, making sounds again to distract him. But this time, MC didn't fall for it, and punched him in the lower jaw, throwing him up to the ceiling. The monster hit the ceiling and got stuck in the groove made by its body, and Yangjing said with a smile that if he could hit it when it wasn't yelling, then at level 20 the hit had become much better. The monster began to heal its wounds and asked in surprise why the noise didn't work. Right now, behind Yangjing was an advanced weapon called the Absolutely Silent Silencer, created using a silencer and broken headphones, all of which he spent 2 points on. This weapon creates an absolute silence zone within a radius of 2 meters around it, so that no sound from the inside can escape out, and no sound from the outside can penetrate in. He thought that now he understood why those big shots Nanyu spoke of didn't dare to come here. Without soundproofing like his, it was impossible to engage in combat. His opponent jumped down from the ceiling and approached him, then began to throw punches, which he easily parried. At one point, the monster snapped his fingers, but when he saw that the man only looked at him with a grin, he became very nervous. After that, the protagonist hit him with a fist with all his might, causing blood to spurt from his wounds. He tried to somehow respond to the blow, but he couldn't, and Yangjing hit him with all his might in the head and turned off the absolutely silent muffler. From his blow, the monster was thrown back and he crashed into the wall of the cave, after which the system reported that the boss of one form was defeated, for which he received 5 points. Now he has 6 available. He asked. He took off only half of his health, and he has already been given a reward? Is the system afraid that he might die? Even he wasn't worried when he almost died in the illusion. It seems that the second clone is the real one. He reactivated the absolutely silent muffler, and at that moment his opponent began to make sounds again, hitting the stones with fists and feet. This made Yangjing wary, and he thought that during the battle, he must have already realized that the noise illusions no longer work on him. What is he doing again? The monster clasped his fists together, making a sound again, and Yangjing looked at him in surprise, becoming very nervous. Yangjing was surrounded by bright streams, his level increased to 26, he used 6 levels of enhancement. There were no available enhancement points left. He received a passive skill, Chasing the Wind Class 1. The effect of the skill allows him to move at the speed of the bullets, shells, missiles and other weapons he fired. Another passive skill, Winding Overtake. If the enemy's level is higher than or equal to his, Yangjing will receive enhancement points +1. If his level is higher than the enemy, you can get 3 points. For every 5 levels higher than the enemy, Yangjing loses 1 point. Now you can get enhancement points for killing any enemy. The zombie looked at him with bright eyes, his body was enveloped in a haze, and Yangjing became worried. The zombie realized that his zombification skills did not work on him, so he decided to use it on himself. It works like a buff, instantly increasing physical strength. In front of him stood an evil zombie with a bright aura, but suddenly it disappeared. Yangjing turned around and realized that the monster was behind him, and at that moment the zombie swung his hand and hit MC in the face, leaving a scratch. The protagonist realized that the monster was much faster than before, he barely dodged it. The system issued a warning, he was infected with zombie poison. Before the poison bar is full, he must use enhancement points to debuff and level up. Yangjing became worried. This is the problem with enhancement points. He is afraid that he will not be able to defeat this zombie. Everything is used up, and there are no other reserves. The rock and roll zombie is level 35, but at least now he can see the guy's level. The difference is not as huge as it seemed. At that moment, the zombie began to attack again and swung his claws so fast that sparks flew around. Yangjing realized that he would not be able to use close combat, he had to keep his distance. He started shooting from his pistol, but the zombie immediately tensed up, and then caught the bullet with his claws. However, he did not see that Yang Jing was already flying above his head. The monster looked up and immediately kicked him. Yang Jing began to fly back. He hit the ground several times, stones and dust rose up from the impact, and the impact with the wall was even stronger and louder. He sat in a cloud of dust and breathed heavily. His health was greatly reduced. He frowned. This is bad. Not only did he not notice its flash, but he also cannot keep up with the speed of the bullet. His recently acquired skill in chasing the wind misses damage too easily. This is a rank A boss. If Yang Jing can't keep his distance, then he needs to be tougher. He clenched his fists and prepared to fight, and immediately after that, he began to run around the entire cave, leaving clouds of dust and craters in the ground. Because of his fight with the monster, there were endless sounds of blows and an aura from their movement. MC hit the zombie's head again with great force, tearing off the horn. The monster is very tough. If one blow can't knock off the head, then he needs to continue. He must finish before the poison gauge is full. Yang Jing blocked the zombie's blows with his hands. None of his guns can pierce this guy's skull. The thunder fire spear that pierces armor is useless in close combat. The monster struck with its claws with particular cruelty. Yang Jing decided that if he had come this far, then he simply cannot die. He needs to think about what else he can do. Suddenly he remembered the Gloria Tendon, although it is used for throwing in combination with the thunder fire spear. But what if he redirected the power and used it in close combat? After activating the tendon, there is a cooldown, so he only has one chance. Yang Jing gathered all his strength in his fist, creating electricity. Using his fist as a spear is risking his life to reach the next level. He used a swing with all his might, and then hit the monster with his electric fist. From his blow, the monster's head began to deform, and then the monster flew back with a huge blow, sliding on the ground and raising a huge wall of dust, sparks and stones. Yang Jing saw that only parts of the monster's legs remained in the air. The system reported that the boss was destroyed. 10 enhancement points were obtained. 10 enhancement points are currently available. Suddenly, Yang Jing felt something strange. His veins glowed. He realized that the poison bar was full. He needed to quickly get a debuff and improve his level. A very bright light began to shine from the cave. MC increased to level 35, points spent on eliminating poison 9, he has one available enhancement point. He received the skill Improved Shooting, each bullet consumes 3 units of energy. Normal bullets now have increased recoil, armor-piercing shells have increased penetration. The incendiary bomb has an improved ignition effect, explosives have an improved explosion effect, and the flash has an improved blinding effect. The higher the level of Yang Jing, the stronger the effect of the weapon. Yang Jing realized that when the energy units reach 100, this is enough to use a magazine of 30 rounds. It seems that this skill is not bad. He received the skill Zombie Core. There is an equipment effect. When activating the Zombie Core, he can simultaneously control low-level zombies and non-elite zombies. Every second, 1 unit of energy is consumed. After completing certain tasks, he can improve the skill with enhancement points. He looked at the ball in his hand. He had fought for his life, and it was worth it. He heard strange sounds and looked to the side. Columns of smoke were rising up among the houses. Yang Jing was horrified. Was the city under attack? At this time, tanks were shooting there. The military shouted that this was bad. Such old guns could not protect the city. The phalanxes were destroyed by zombie puppets. Only one remained, and the Fang family's fighters were out of order. He demands that at least a couple of high-level zombie soldiers be sent to him. Ashes were flying all over the city. There was smoke and weapons did not stop firing. A huge monster was flying in the air. Magical breath was escaping from its mouth. It easily dodged the bomb attacks. The commander told the taxi driver not to be afraid and to kill the monster right away. However, the guy was worried and panicked. Why was he risking his life for 1,000 yuan a month? At first, he thought that working in air defense was easy. He believed that flying zombies did not exist. But now he is afraid that he will die. Right in front of him, the zombie opened its mouth and started to blow flames out of its mouth. But suddenly a huge fighter hit the monster on the head with an equally huge hammer. The blow caused a fiery explosion, after which the zombie lay unconscious, and the man stood in front of the tank. The guy asked the commander, "What's going on?" He said in a panic, "This is the elite of the riot squad. Even now, the fighter always defeats the zombies, is among the top 10 in Shuguang, along with Olsen." He looked at the smiling man, saying that his name is Double Strike Bao Shan. The soldiers hugged and cried, saying that they were now saved. But when they repeated these words, their faces expressed horror. The man saw drops of blood and a body cut in half in front of him. The zombie dragon stood up on its paws and struck with its tail. Bao Shan was shocked by this. What happened? Did some stinking lizard hurt him? Next month he goes from rank B+ to rank A-, and now this is happening? His eyes and body glowed brightly, and he screamed furiously. The sound wave of his scream reached the monster. He tabled in a cloud of dust and glared at the zombie, saying, he can't believe that the stinking lizard made him transform. His body became pale, strange devices appeared, his zombification rate reached 99%. He knows that he will not turn into a zombie like the low-level soldiers, but it is difficult to maintain such a zombification rate. And he is one of the best in the top 10, fortunately. The fight will end quickly. He saw the shadow of the flying tail, but quickly caught it. Bao Shan asked, the zombie will attack again, but he will not fall for such a trick twice. The monster released its tail, and Bao Shan screamed, although he does not mind training with it some more, but he is in a hurry, so he will send the zombie straight to hell. He hit the monster, whose body cracked. With a scream, he hit it with his other hand. His punch was incredibly powerful. A bright flash erupted from his fist, and the monster itself flew high into the sky and exploded there. A bullet fell out of the device on Bao Shan's hand. He looked at the zombie with a smile. Only some bloody parts of the body were visible among the smoke. The fighter looked down when the dragon fell, breaking the asphalt. He said that the blow accurately smashed the monster's head. He was dead. He and the military showed approving gestures. The guys said that exploding from gloves is very cool. They say that it can increase the power of the explosion, pouring in the energy of the zombie. He is a real gunman. With such a strong person nearby, they can be calm. But Bao Shan's mood worsened when he heard sounds behind him. He turned around in a panic at the strange light and asked what was going on. With a loud noise, a stream of flame flew upward. This powerful beam pierced the building through and flew far into the air. In that place was a huge hole of a melted building. In the smoke lay parts of military equipment, and people cut into pieces. Bao Shan looked up in shock. Now it was all over. He couldn't heal himself. The zombification rate was 99% before. Even if he used zombification a little, he would become a full-fledged zombie. At the same time, the dragon began to release powerful flames from its mouth again. Bao Shan was indignant. How could it be that the monster's head was still there? This was terrible. Today he was really stuck there, and yet, it was better to burn than to turn into a zombie and stand against his people. He looked at the bright light from the fire. If he died, then there was nothing he could do. He wasn't good enough, he had to admit it. Suddenly, something flew over the roofs of the multi-story buildings. The dragon turned around and looked at it in surprise. Something was approaching the monster at an incredible speed. It was an angry Yang Jing. He pulled out his sword, and then quickly launched multiple precise strikes, cutting the zombie dragon into pieces. He stopped on the roof, and behind him, the dragon seemed to explode and shatter into pieces. The system reported that he had destroyed a B+ rank fire dragon. He had obtained 2 enhancement points. Now he has 3 enhancement points available. He had obtained a Karma Core. MC can use 1 enhancement point to enhance the designated target, then release Karmic Fire. Bao Shan was shocked. How could he not defeat the dragon with 99% zombification? But this guy could. The soldier was also shocked and thought that this guy was incredibly strong. Yang Jing stood at the edge of a hole stained with blood. He looked at his brother's sword in surprise, which was still growing. This sword is not suitable for him. It cannot withstand fast attacks at all. He needs to change weapons. Suddenly, he heard Bao Shan call him a hero. Yang Jing looked down and asked in fear, "What's going on? Is he still alive?" Bao Shan replied, "Even as a zombie soldier, he didn't think he would get injured like this. His blood is thick, so he lasts longer." MC asked if he should take him to the hospital or heal himself. But Bao Shan said that there was no need to do that. They are not zombies. Monsters can survive with only a brain stem. But for them, self-healing that goes beyond their body is useless. He will not live to see the hospital, but he would like to express his gratitude and admiration to Yang Jing, although it is too late. And now, he asks for a favor: shoot a bullet into his brain stem so that he does not turn into a zombie and does not harm people. Yang Jing looked at the system panel. It says that the target's health is below 20. The conditions meet the requirements. First, it is necessary to retreat the current minion dog Fang Xiao. After the improvement, the target is restored and increases by 1 level. Bao Shan looked at the bright flash with a smile. The military stood near the tank and looked at the huge glow. Bao Shan suddenly opened his eyes and shouted, calling for the owner. He did not understand what was happening and asked, "Has his body recovered yet, because it was a gift from the owner?" Then he covered his face with his hands and asked himself, why does he keep saying owner? He feels embarrassed, but at the same time a little nervous. Bao Shan began to look around and asked, but where did his owner go? At this time, Yang Jing swallowed nervously. He was standing in front of the entrance to the gun shop. The dissatisfied seller said that he had already warned him not to come there. Does he want to be thrown out again? MC looked at him creepily, but then began to talk like a little child. He has some cool things, he would like the master to appraise them. If the price is right, he will sell them. The seller said the last time the guy was dressed as a security guard, he had not seen him before. The guy is a new recruit, right? It is hard for a new recruit like him to collect basic equipment. What quality is he talking about? He waved his hand and said that he can still show him the items, but quickly. Then Yang Jing handed him the legendary John pistol, damage plus 200, accuracy plus 200, firing range plus 200. But the satisfied seller shouted, is he completely crazy? Is he not afraid of anything? So he gives him a broken pistol? Yang Jing confidently asked if the seller would like to take a closer look at the weapon. The man replied that there is nothing to look at, it is trash. Even if you look at it 1,000 times, it will still be trash. But when he looked at the gun again, he thought, what a strong shine comes from such a terrible weapon. He was surprised, could this be the legendary weapon? He said that he will take a closer look at his weapon, and then held up 5 fingers and offered 50,000 yuan for the weapon. He would take it at a loss as an apology for what happened last time. He thought, if this idiot agreed later, he would be able to inject zombie energy into this beautiful gun. And when he turned away, he could sell it for 60,000 to the zombie soldiers. It was so easy and profitable. But the disappointed MC said that the seller should add another 0, he would sell the gun for 500,000. But then the man shouted, did he want to rob him? Yang Jing insulted the old man. He could not humiliate himself like that. Even if he killed him, he would not buy a gun for such a price. But soon the seller handed him a bag with 5 million and asked him to take it. If he had any more good goods, he could sell it there. Yang Jing took a deep breath and said that he could smell the wonderful smell of money. Someone came into the store and the man quickly greeted the customers. There were 3 zombie soldiers of B rank, B- and Fang Shuo of C+ rank. When the clerk saw them, he told the guy to leave, the store was closing right now. The protagonist asked, in this post-apocalyptic world, in addition to taxes, do you need to pay for protection? He started to walk forward and said that the people of the Fang family need to be taught good behavior. But the clerk immediately stopped him, telling him not to be so impulsive, he needs to leave quickly. He looked at them with displeasure, but began to walk towards the exit, where Fang Shuo closed the door in front of him and said that he would not leave so quickly. Fang Shuo said that if he paid, he would receive protection, but Yang Jing said displeasedly, if they did not let him go, the guy would kneel, cry and beg Yang Jing to leave. Fang Shuo got angry and shouted that he was a nasty, impudent person. No one had ever dared to talk to him like that. Was he tired of living? Did he want to die? But then the excited salesman came between them. He asked Fang Shuo not to be angry. He was just a rookie. He didn't know the rules. He could talk to Yang Sheng's superiors, let them scold him, but for now it was better to let the guy go. Fang Shuo flicked the man's forehead and said that the guy could go, but the salesman himself had been telling them all sorts of nonsense for 3 months. His daughter should come right away and entertain them. The man said that his daughter had problems with her legs, and also for a long time, he asked her not to harm her. Fang Shuo grinned and said that they didn't care, other women would be enough for a change. But at that moment, MC started talking. He immediately recognized the scoundrels from the Fang family. The dissatisfied Fang Shuo didn't understand him, and the evil protagonist said he never doubted that they were morally undeveloped. Fang Shuo pointed at his acquaintance and said that he couldn't stand it anymore. Someone had to hit him. The shop assistant said that they had better let Yang Jing go. He wasn't even a zombie soldier, but an ordinary person who couldn't withstand their blows. But one of the guys braced himself for the blow and asked with a grin not to worry. His fist was so fast that it didn't hurt. He immediately hit Yang Jing in the face, after which the shock wave broke the panoramic glass. Fang Shuo brushed off the dust and said that he ordered to hit the guy, not to smash the store. Next time he would collect the fee. But then he noticed something strange. Why was the fighter shaking so much if this was not the first time he killed a person? The guy was panicking at that moment. This was definitely something strange. This feeling in his hand, it was too strange that his fist hurt and bled. Yang Zheng's figure appeared from a cloud of dust. He said that this was a feeling of class pressure. The guy was terrified, and then began to scream and swing his arm again to strike. When he ran up to MC, he swung his hand and cut off half of the guy's body in one blow. Everyone present looked at this in horror. They were sprinkled with drops of blood. No one knew how to react. Fang Shuo began to panic. What happened? Why can an ordinary person, without zombie energy, kill a B-rank minus zombie soldier in a few seconds? The second fighter immediately began to attack Yangjing, but the protagonist cut off the guy's head without hesitation. The system reported receiving 2 improvement points. He has 4 improvement points available. MC loomed over Fang Shuo threateningly, who was shaking with fear. He said that he cannot be killed. He shouted that he is a relative of the city's headman Fang Xiao. If the guy dares to touch him, there will be trouble. The Fang family sent high-level zombie soldiers after him, and then they will kill the guy. Yang Jing thought that he had already heard about high-level zombie soldiers. Nanyu had talked about it before, but they did not find out anything specific. Wouldn't it be easier to ask a member of the Fang family? At this moment, Fang Shuo was pleased. He thought that Yang Jing was scared, as this always happens when Fang Xiao is mentioned. He uses this opportunity to manipulate the guy. Fang Shuo immediately shouted that Yang Jing is finished. The Fang family will find all his acquaintances, and then kill them all. However, during his speech, the protagonist punched him right in the face. Fang Shuo flew into the wall and hit it hard, destroying it. His health dropped to 21%, after which he fell to the floor. The protagonist thought that this was bad. If he did not calculate the next blow, he would kill him. He wanted to make the guy a minion to get information. Then he asked, does the man not want to take revenge on them? But the seller awkwardly said that he forgot about it. When he sees people from the Fang family, he is afraid to look at them, let alone beat them. However, almost immediately after that, the surprised MC watched as the enraged man beat Fang Shuo with a huge club and shouted that this is his payment. After 30 minutes, he was tired and said contentedly, it turns out that beating people is so tiring, but so enjoyable. Fang Shuo was not like himself. He had 5% of his health left. Yang Jing put his hand on his chest, spreading light. The system reported that the permanent minion Bao Shan was released. Now he got Fang Shuo's permanent minion. 1 enhancement point was used, 3 points remained. Fang Shuo stood up abruptly. Now his health was at its maximum. He looked at the protagonist in surprise and asked, is this his master? He fell to his knees and bowed, saying, apologize for his stupidity and disrespect. The system reported that Fang Shuo's minion is C+ rank, awaiting orders. He said that from today on, he would give everything he has to serve the master. The surprised shopkeeper looked at this and thought, what's going on? He has lived there for 10 years, but he has never seen the people of the Fang family bow so much to a stranger. Why did this arrogant and power-hungry Fang Shuo suddenly start acting like a dog? MC looked at him sternly and ordered him to tell him absolutely everything he knew about the Fang family. After a while, the protagonist said in disappointment that this guy knew too little, but he repeated that he was a relative of Fang Xiao. In the end, Yang Jing would be closer in blood to Qin Shi Huang than these two. Suddenly, Fang Shuo took out a knife and wanted to cut off something in his pants. He apologized for his uselessness. He would atone for his sins. Yang Jing shouted that he should not do this. He thought about it. There were still successes. At least he learned about the existence of the necropolis. The necropolis is a great place to level up, plus there are zombies and higher level equipment. Of course, when he reaches S rank and kills Fang Xiao, all the bad things will stop, right? The salesman said that the idea was good, but is the guy confident that he can defeat Fang Xiao's S rank guards? Yang Jing said that he was confident. The man then said that there were many people in the city who hated Fang Xiao, but no one could kill him. There was an S rank assassin before, but even he couldn't do it. The power of the people surrounding Fang Xiao is unknown. Has Yang Jing ever thought about the fact that even if Fang Xiao dies, the Fang family's power will weaken? Outside the city, the zombies will take advantage of the situation. What to do then? The protagonist replied that he hadn't thought about it. The man said that he also hated Fang Xiao. Over the years, he had killed many innocent people, including his family. Either they make a peace treaty to end this apocalypse, or they find a more suitable leader. Otherwise, even more chaos may arise. But no matter what, he is just a small figure who opened a gun shop. Yang Jing must decide what to do. The protagonist asked what the man was holding when he handed him the box. The seller replied that it was his gift. The weapon was made many years ago from necropolis materials. He thinks it will suit Yang Jing perfectly. The system reported receiving a necropolis SIG pistol. Most of the pistol was made using special necropolis materials. The weapon is highly durable, it can pierce a zombie's skull. He also received a necropolis karambit. Most of this weapon was made using special necropolis materials. It has an incredibly sharp blade. After a while, Yang Jing was in a remote forest. There he and Fan Shuo were standing near a small building. This is a rank of military necropolis. The minimum entry level required is A. The protagonist said that this is not bad, at least he knows where the necropolis is. He ordered Fan Shuo to guard the place and not let anyone in. The minion said that he understood everything. MC stood in front of the entrance, he spread his aura to the door. The system immediately made a warning, he can choose the difficulty level. The normal level allows you to use all skills and equipment, but the rewards are normal. At the epic level, only enhanced shooting can be used as an active skill. Passive skills, improvements and transformations will be used as usual. Physical strength will be reduced by 50%, but the rewards are very high. At the catastrophic level, it is impossible to use any active and passive skills. He can use his equipment. Physical strength will be reduced to the level of the most ordinary person, but the reward is the highest. There is an additional condition called 1 as 100. When there are no allies around him within a radius of 50 meters, he will have to meet at least 100 enemies alone and destroy them within an hour. There is an additional bonus. Yang Jing remembered that this is a copy of the game he played as a child. Normal rewards are useless, but at the catastrophic level you can die. The protagonist chose the epic level. The doors to the dark room immediately opened. He walked down the stairs and felt a strong zombie energy. He can't imagine what's down there. Remembering the man's words, he thinks that it's too early to plan to kill Fang Xiao. He should first have an ace up his sleeve before doing anything. The protagonist found himself in front of a huge gate. When he reaches S rank, he will return to this plan. He opened the gate with difficulty, saying that he needs to find out what kind of monsters are behind the door. He fell as soon as the gate was completely opened and felt awkward. The system immediately reported that the mission to kill the head of state had begun. Until the sovereign was killed, he would not be able to leave the necropolis. Suddenly, a soldier appeared in front of his face and shouted, "What was he doing there, scared before the fight?" He, Private Yang Jing, must stand up. What happened? Where is his uniform, weapon? Is he going to rest in such clothes? Soon the protagonist, who did not understand anything, stood among a crowd of white soldiers. They were all sailing on a military boat, washed by the waves. There were quite a few such ships with them. He realized that this was a copy of the setting of the Second World War. The soldier who was nearby took out his gun and said that he could take it. But then his face was full of shock. He asked where he got all this from. MC replied, if he really wants to know this, then he bought it all from his grandfather. It is completely saturated with zombie energy. He just pulled it out of the armory. Now he was wearing a Pro 500 bulletproof helmet, a bulletproof vest. He also had a SIG Necropolis pistol, a Scar assault rifle with an activated absolutely silent suppressor. All the soldiers looked at him in shock, but their commander called them out of their thoughts, shouting that the hatch was opening. They were getting ready to board. The boat began to shake, but almost immediately they began shooting at the boats from the shore. The entire boat was subjected to massive artillery fire. Only a few soldiers came ashore, the rest remained in the boat after the shooting. One of the soldiers turned around and thought, is he the only one who survived on boat number 7? Yang Jing appeared next to him out of thin air, after which he screamed in fear, and the protagonist asked what was wrong? He said that the guy scared him, but where did the helmet go? He replied that the helmet was hidden by an illusion, which greatly surprised the soldier. The guy looked at the top of the cliff. Because the tanks couldn't break through these barriers, the MG-24 machine guns were a big threat to their infantry. The commander told the private to wait until the machine gun moved to another place, and then he should follow it. However, he looked in the direction where Yang Jing was no longer. At this time, the rest of the army was running amidst explosions and bullets from the artillery. Everyone was surprised when they saw the protagonist running ahead of everyone. He crouched, preparing to jump, and then jumped so high that he flew above the cliffs. The shocked soldiers asked, is this really a person? MC was approaching the bunker from which they were shooting at him non-stop. He was confident and smiling, but then quickly stopped being like that. He crashed straight into the wall, leaving large cracks, and then said that he forgot about the 50% physical health debuff, otherwise he would have been able to jump over. Inside the bunker, the soldiers also did not understand what was happening. One of them looked out through the crack. At the same moment, the main character grabbed him by the face and broke the mask, and then threw him down. He climbed up, thinking that the enemy troops really were zombies. He instantly got inside the bunker of surprised enemies, and then immediately began to shoot at them. They were clearly killed above him, 10 out of 100. He always shot at the target. The bullets tore off a part of the body from each guy, and soon there were huge holes in the walls. Soldiers began to gather at the bunker. They were reinforcements. They were surprised when they saw a grenade flying out of the bunker, but it was strange that grenades were constantly flying out of there and did not end. Yang Jing threw out grenades and said, "Good thing he bought a lot of things from his grandfather." After that, a blinding flash illuminated the zombie soldiers. The entire bunker exploded into a huge fiery cloud. On the battlefield, zombies attacked people and bit them. When they were shot, they remained alive. One of the monsters turned around and the soldiers screamed, asking the captain what was happening. Why was it so hard to kill? They did not understand it. For the first time they saw such a difference in strength. In the long trenches lay many dead, but there were also those who hid from the bullets, pressing lower. The soldiers complained that the zombies killed almost the entire company, and they were only 10 individuals. They stood in front of the monster and said in fear that the two of them almost had no bullets left. The soldier suggested that the captain retreat, but he replied that they cannot. Did he see how fast it runs? He took out a knife and said that he can still fight. Immediately the zombie jumped with a scream to attack. The captain looked at the approaching hand of the zombie in fear, although he said so, but his body went numb. Suddenly, in front of him, the monster exploded and flew into small pieces with blood. The captain looked at the remaining parts of the monster's body in surprise, and then turned around. There was Yang Jing, who shot a zombie with a shotgun with zombie energy. The protagonist said that these soldiers are actually zombies. To kill them, you need to crush the brain stem or just smash the skull. The captain looked at his gun and thought, what was this? The power is like a small caliber projectile. The soldier wiped his sweat and said that it was finally over. However, he did not notice the approaching foot. The giant zombie crushed the guy and splashed blood. The captain looked at it in horror. This is the Imperial Elite Major A level 40 zombie. The monster's hand reached out to the soldier, but when he wanted to grab the guy, his hand slid through the air. MC grabbed the soldier and threw him back, telling him to run from there as fast and as far as possible. He began to shoot at the monster with a shotgun. Many high-power shells flew at the major. A cloud of smoke appeared. The main character looked at him in surprise. There was a hole near the monster. The zombie covered himself with an earthen slab, like a shield. Yang Jing realized that this wall covered his shots, and then the monster hit the slab, which shattered into many stones. Yang Jing had to jump back, and then many more times. When stones flew at him, hitting the ground, they created explosions. The major looked at the battlefield in the dust, and then heard something and again created a large slab of earth. As soon as he made a shield, stones broke against it, and Yang Jing was flying above. He began to shoot from a shotgun without stopping. Huge craters appeared on the ground, which destroyed the dome created by the zombie. MC jumped down, he shot again. The bullet quickly approached the dome and flew through the stone barrier. The main character looked into the hole. There the zombie major stood without a huge piece of his stomach. Yang Jing realized that the perspective does not work. This is bad, he needs to reload. However, he was surprised to see a huge fist next to him. An earthen fist hit him from the mountain, creating a dust explosion. Yang Jing was able to block the blow with his shotgun with great force, and said that his suit was very powerful. The old weapon was useless against the monster. He turned his head to the side and saw a zombie. Realizing that the guy had gained time to heal himself, his hole was closing up. The fist of earth shattered into stones, and the major began to cast a spell again. Earthen spikes appeared under Yang Jing's feet. He had to jump quickly and high to avoid being killed by the giant spikes. He stopped and began shooting again, and the major used another spell. From him, slabs of earth began to burst out of the ground towards Yang Jing. They served as shields. Powerful bullets flew through them and left holes there. The major thought that the last shield would remain intact, but he was surprised when shells began to fly out of it. His body began to dissolve in parts from the bullets. Yang Jing quickly destroyed all the pits and got to the zombie. He put the barrel to the monster's neck, and it began to conjure again. Earthen fingers appeared around them. The monster grabbed his hand. They stood on a huge earthen palm. Yang Jing thought, will they really die together? The hand squeezed and boulders flew around with a huge cloud of dust. When the stones stopped flying in the air, tails began to appear around the fingers from the swings of the sword. MC cut the fingers that flew into the air. The system reported that a zombie level 40 major Imperial Elite was destroyed. 6 improvement points were received, 9 improvement points are available to him. He received the zombie core. Now you can use this thing to level up. Geotechnical abilities have been received. A soldier looked at Yang Jing through binoculars, and Feng said that this is interesting. MC looked at the zombie core in his palm. You can't use enhanced shooting in the necropolis. After upgrading, this core won't work, he'd better leave it for other situations. Traditionally, he'll spend 7 points on upgrading, and the remaining 2 points in reserve. His body glowed. The system reported that he'd leveled up to 42, using 7 points, 2 left. A door flew out of the ground. He approached it, and the system reported that the first stage was complete. He was moving on to the next one. After a bright flash, he found himself in a similar area. A column of tanks was driving in front of him. The protagonist realized that these were Sherman tanks. If a tiger was lying in ambush nearby, then this Sherman tank was finished. A soldier climbed out of the tank and told the protagonist to hide somewhere, since it was unsafe there. However, soon the tank's hatch exploded from a shell. A huge fiery explosion illuminated the space. Yang Jing hid behind the wall and asked, "It wasn't because of him, was it?" There really was that same powerful tank next to them. The soldiers in the column shouted that there was a tiger in front of them. But the second guy answered him that the tank was slow. Their advantage was mobility. They would attack from this side, and the rest from the city. They quickly began to drive into different streets and alleys of the city, but there was another tank there, aiming at them. The soldier shouted that he saw another tiger. He did not have time to drive away when the tank fired at him. The car exploded right in front of the other. Another column was driving along another road. They saw fiery explosions in the city. The soldier shouted that the tank platoon in the city was destroyed. The destruction of the tigers depended on their platoons. Tanks drove up to them. The soldier shouted that there were 2 tigers ahead. Everyone should open fire in advance. They should distract them. The main tank of the column and the tigers began to fire noisy and powerful shells. The tigers quickly shot several tanks from 2 columns at once, leaving craters from the explosions. One of the tanks drove behind the tiger and fired, making a hole from the shell. Sparks began to fly out of the tank. He shouted that they needed to fire again, to finish this. However, an enemy shell appeared in their side. The tiger fired at them, and the tank began to burn. There were 3 tanks on the battlefield. 2 were burning and smoking. A soldier climbed out of the tiger and looked around the area with binoculars. He was surprised when he realized that there was still someone left on the battlefield. He saw an approaching tank and said that he had never seen such a model. But it did not matter. One tank could not defeat their tiger. He shouted for them to start shooting, after which the tank fired a powerful shell from the muzzle. A huge and deadly shell flew towards the tank, but only bounced off the car like a ball. The shocked soldier opened his mouth and thought, "How is it possible to remain untouched?" Yang Jing said that now it was his turn, and then fired an unusual shell. The big shell flew incredibly fast, like an arrow. The tiger was pierced through, and then the tank exploded into a huge fire cloud. MC said that they deserved it, and then his tank disappeared. He thought, it's good that there were points for different situations. This is the tank he stole from the Fan family. Thanks to the points, he upgraded the tank to a single one. But now the enemies were not zombies. It seems that the elite army of zombies is inside that fortress. Enemy tanks continued to drive around the city. One of the bosses looked through the periscope and said, "He can't believe that guy destroyed their tiger. When he is in ambush, he will be blown to pieces." At this time, Yang Jing was hiding in one of the houses and watching the tank. He began to conjure. His magic enveloped the barrel of the tiger tank. Yang Jing fired from his hiding place. His shell flew through the tank again, but at the same time damaged the second tank standing behind. The first tank exploded and was burning, and a soldier from the second said that the guy was inside. "We had to shoot." But they didn't have time to do anything. Their tank exploded too. A whole column of tigers was driving into the city. The soldier asked the colonel why the entire company of tigers was suddenly mobilized. What happened there in the city? The colonel replied that a platoon of tanks had been destroyed in the city. Even the king tigers were coming as support. A tank was driving towards them. They shouted that there was an enemy tank ahead, 2 kilometers away. The colonel said that they shouldn't be nervous. It was within the maximum range. Yang Jing's tank lit up and fired a fiery projectile. The iron arrow quickly flew towards the enemies, and when it approached the tank, it began to burn. Its projectile did not stop for a second, flying through a long, huge column of tanks. All the tanks began to explode. He alone shot all the tanks, which were now burning. He drove past and said that it was indeed a king tiger, quite strong, so the only one did not explode. Suddenly, wires began to come out of the tank. Many long wires came out of all the holes of the tank. MC looked at what was happening in surprise. The parts of the tank began to change, after which the wires seemed to return inside the tank. Now the tank turned into a level 50 zombie. This is the Spider King tank. Shocked Yangjing said that this turret is an exact copy of his tank. An enemy tank shot at him, but after a huge fiery explosion, Yangjing was unharmed. He quickly drove towards the King Spider. Apparently the blind spot should be the top. He fired and his special projectile quickly flew forward, hitting the hatch of the tank. MC drove away from the explosion. He looked at the King Spider in surprise. Tentacles began to come out of the tank again. They grabbed Yang Sheng's tank and lifted the car up. The zombie tank began to spin the protagonist in the air. His head hurt badly. He was disoriented. This tank will smash him and the car into small pieces. He said that then he did not need a tank, after which the car disappeared. MC grabbed the tentacles, but the zombie tank did not stop hitting him on the ground and spinning him in the air. But suddenly the tentacle returned back. Yangjing stopped on the ground. While he was flying, he was able to attach several bombs to the Spider King. Soon the tank exploded into a large fire cloud. He looked at the fire and said that he did not see a notification about the fire. The zombie was still alive. Indeed, tentacles appeared from the cloud, which reached out to the column with destroyed tanks. But Yangjing said that he would not wait for the tank to transform, he would finish it now. A magic circle appeared from his hand, and the half-destroyed tank stopped in a cloud of dust. There was a zombie captain who merged with the tank. The protagonist was shocked. Could it be Grandpa Fen Mao? He suddenly turned into a zombie there. Then what about Fen Mao and the villagers? His legs were wrapped in tentacles that crawled out of the ground, and then tentacles with muzzles at the end surrounded the guy. They began to shoot. A giant fiery explosion appeared in place of Yangjing. Fen Mao watched this in a cloud of dust. He was pleased with his cruelty. A space appeared in the thick smoke. The tank was pierced by many bullets and smoke was coming from all the holes. Fen Mao looked forward in surprise. The air and smoke were cut by a long, fast tentacle. There were more and more of them. They tried to hit Yangjing, who quickly ran among them and dodged. Soon the protagonist approached the tank. He prepared his dagger. He swung his weapon and looked angrily at the enemy. He began to quickly inflict an incredible number of cuts, tearing the monster apart. The zombie exploded, and the air flew off the head. MC walked up to the head. By that time Fen Mao's mind had cleared. He was surprised when he saw Yangjing. The protagonist asked his grandfather if something had happened to Xiaoqi. He sadly said that he had completely forgotten about her. He was supposed to save her. But his head immediately exploded and shattered into bloody pieces. Yangjing sadly looked at the system notification that the zombie had been destroyed. He had received 9 improvement points. Now he had 10 points. He heard strange sounds from behind, turned around and asked who was there. Nanyu's brother came up to him and said that showing mercy to zombies was not Yangjing's style. They were seeing each other for the first time. He was Nan Feng. The guy must be familiar with his sister Nanyu. MC replied dissatisfied that he himself decides whether to kill someone or not. Why did Nan Feng do it for him? He replied with a smirk that it was quite threatening, but he did not come to fight. After all, they had a common enemy, the Feng family. He snapped his fingers and said that they would meet at the eagle's nest when Yangjing was finished. He created a door for Yangjing, and he himself began to dissolve into thin air, saying that he would wait for him. The protagonist looked at his aura and immediately thought that there was a catch in his words. The system reported that he was level 50, 10 upgrade points available. Still, MC thought that it did not matter now. He would enter and think about it later. When he pushed the door, he found himself in a bright space wearing a pilot's mask. He quickly flew through the sky in a small military aircraft, and others surrounded him. Yangjing immediately knew that at level 3, he would have to fight in the air. I wonder how many points it would take to upgrade an ordinary fighter from World War II to a 5th-generation fighter. Well, he doesn't have time. He'll just do it. The points should be enough. His plane was shining brightly and flashing lightning. Soon, an F-22 fighter was flying across the sky at an incredible speed. He used 2 upgrade points. He had 8 left. Another soldier looked at this and shouted in shock, "What's going on? Is he hallucinating?" They started shooting at his plane non-stop. The shells caused heavy damage and destroyed the plane. Soon, the aircraft began to fall and smoke heavily. There were a lot of enemy planes in the sky. Yangjing was in front of his brigade and fired at the planes non-stop. The enemy captain ordered everyone to scatter in different directions. He himself began to fly right after the fighter, reporting that an unidentified model has been detected. This object will be a priority attack. MC thought they wanted to attack him head-on, but they will regret it. At this time, the enemy captain said that the object is in sight, he will not escape. However, Yang Jing turned on the engines at full power. He flew incredibly fast, leaving only a white trail of clouds. He broke the sound barrier and said that everything was fine now. He was out of range of 0. The enemy soldiers were confused. What should they do now? It was as if he had disappeared into the clouds. The second soldier said that they might be at a disadvantage. Suddenly his plane exploded. He shouted that they were under attack. Where did the attack come from if no one was even visible? However, the second plane exploded just as quickly. The fire cloud broke the plane into many separate pieces. Yang Jing flew happily above the clouds and said that there was no way to hide from supersonic air-to-air missiles at long range. He fired another missile, which hit the plane flying in the middle. The soldier said that this was bad. The missiles were reaching them too easily. They had already lost 8 fighters. But suddenly they noticed that the attacks had stopped. This happened because Yang Jing had run out of bombs. Then he decided to have a close-range fight and began to fall down quickly. He turned on the engines to maximum power. When they approached, he began to shoot continuously from a machine gun. His bullets followed exactly the enemy fighter and completely riddled it. The plane almost immediately began to smoke and fall. It fell into the water and immediately drowned there, and at this time the second soldier flew up to the main character and shouted that he would now take revenge. MC did not do anything yet, but then a soldier from the enemy fighter shouted for him to die and began to shoot. His bullets seemed to soon reach Yang Zheng's fighter, but he turned sharply and rose vertically into the air. All the bullets flew past, and Yang Jing found himself right above the enemy fighters. The surprised soldier screamed, "Is he capable of such a maneuver?" Soon the protagonist was again quickly approaching the enemy fighter and firing a machine gun. The entire plane turned into a leaky, useless piece of iron. The plane was quickly falling down and smoking. Behind him the same fate befell his comrade. MC said that he had destroyed everyone, but there were no more shells left. The next batch of enemies would have to be beaten with fists. Suddenly, someone fired shells at him. The bullets began to hit the fighter in a circle, but could not cause enough damage. Still, the protagonist began to worry. He anxiously looked in the direction of the attack. There, from the clouds, a large plane was gradually visible. It was a level 60 zombie, a 5th-generation Su-57 fighter. Now the wing of Yang Zheng's fighter began to smoke. As soon as the shells ran out, he was given a 5th-generation fighter as an enemy? The system reported that he spent 1 point. The damage was restored. The hull strength was 100%. Fuel and ammunition were replenished. He had 4 improvement points left. He immediately turned on the engine to maximum and quickly flew higher, leaving a trail of clouds and wind. The enemy fighter also turned on the engines more powerfully and quickly flew up, following right behind Yang Jing. The 5th-generation fighter released a bomb. MC screamed and repeated that it was blocked. He flew further and further from the bomb, and then sharply rose up. He turned in the sky and ended up behind the enemy fighter. He was pleased and said that now things are much better, and then he himself released a bomb, which flew towards the zombie fighter. His gun almost reached the target, but the enemy also managed to use Yang Zheng's maneuver and dodged the bomb, flying up. The fighters hovered in the sky, making various circular maneuvers. In one of these, the protagonist sat and tensely screamed, "What a frightening maneuverability!" The enemy directed the bombs towards his plane, and it exploded. Yang Jing rushed at it, and grabbing the ledge, attached the detonator. He screamed, "And here is his gift!" The protagonist did a backflip, pushing off from the hull. He continued to attach detonators to the hull of the plane, when suddenly there was an explosion. Yang Jing spread his arms and flew down. He looked to the side in confusion and asked, "Is he still alive?" "Really?" The smoke began to clear, and from it burst out a dragon with large wings. This is a level 60 zombie, the king of shadow dragons. The protagonist frowned and thought, this boss has a second stage. The dragon opened its big mouth, and Yang Jing moved his hand with the gun to the side and said, "The debuff weakening physical strength is still in effect, so this is the end." The bullet pierced the core of this, and it flew down. The protagonist covered his face with his hands so as not to see the bright explosion. A huge explosion covered a large distance and pierced the Earth's crust. Yang Zheng's eyes widened in surprise and thought, "Okay, he takes his words back." Even with the debuff, he managed to resist the explosion like a nuclear bomb. He turned around and saw the silhouette of a dragon. He thought, while it can't use the second skill, it must have a cooldown. He will use the window. The protagonist took out a machine gun and started shooting at it. The dragon quickly rushed forward, and bullets flew off its body. It opened its huge mouth, where Yangjing flew. He pushed off from it and rushed to the side. He spun the machine gun in his hand and fired an explosive shot. Several bullets hit the dragon's body and it exploded. There were holes on the monster's body, which instantly healed. The protagonist frowned and said, "This one's thick skin easily absorbs damage and recovers very quickly. It seems that if you destroy the core of this one, you won't be able to defeat it. The only problem is that this one has a lot of cores." He frowned and said, "It must have divided the core into fragments, so that it can't be defeated in one hit. The higher the level of the zombies, the more cunning they are." The dragon opened its mouth and began to spin. Yangjing grabbed the body of this one, and because of the speed, he thought he couldn't hold on. He let go of it and flew back. The image of the dragon began to move further and further away, approaching a large flash. The protagonist screamed, "This technique won't work on him." The fire flash flew past and he said, "I told you. It won't work." Suddenly, his body shuddered and he began to be sucked into a black hole. He screamed, "Unlike that skill, this one has super strong gravity." Yangjing held the gun in front of him and used the fire flash. The bullet quickly flew forward, breaking through the barrier and suddenly turned around. The dragon created another energy sphere and the protagonist said, "Horror." Because of the gravity behind him, he won't be able to dodge. One shot and there will be nothing left. He held the gun forward and said, "I'll have to take a risk." He wants to use all the points to upgrade this weapon. A bright glow appeared in front of him and the system window reported several times, "Gun upgraded, gun upgraded." A new upgraded weapon appeared in front of Yangjing. The system window reported, "Received a gambler's revolver, legendary level." This weapon fires a random number of shots with different damage and effects. The lowest damage value is equivalent to a Magnum 500. The protagonist pulled the gun forward and asked, "Gambler's revolver?" Then he's in the game. He used gambling shooting and the cube flew to the side. A large energy flow covered him, and a large poker table appeared under him. The dragon pushed its core forward using its breath. It hit the protagonist's energy flow and a large and bright explosion occurred. At this time, Olsen was sitting on the sofa and drinking coffee. City security officer, Olsen was drinking coffee and lightly blew on it. Everything around shook. She looked at it with a puzzled expression, and suddenly Xiao Zheng's assistant ran into the room and shouted, "Boss, an earthquake. Let him hide." Olsen looked at her and said, "It's not an earthquake, let him come out of there." Xiao Zhang was sitting under the table, covering her head with her hands. She asked, "Is she serious?" Olsen exhaled and thought, those vibrations came from far away, and mixed with the smell of a corpse. She looked to the side and wondered, is there really an S-rank fighting outside the city? At this time, a large dragon was hovering in the air, and the protagonist was rushing forward. He thought luck was on his side. He managed to repel all the attacks, plus the boss's attention was weakened, and gravity was neutralized. The explosion blocked his view, and he managed to take advantage of the flash of fire. Yangjing pointed his gun and fired forward. The dice scattered in the air, and the bullet was aimed straight at the monster's body. It bounced off the dragon and headed in the other direction. It opened its mouth in displeasure, and began to roar. A magic sphere burst out of its mouth again, and it roared loudly. The protagonist fired forward and the bullets were aimed at the open mouth. The dice spun for a long time due to the wind and showed 5 dots on the edge. Yangjing said, "Only 5 is luck, let it not fail him." He was hovering in front of the dragon, when suddenly the monster's belly began to glow. It turned around in confusion and looked at the rays. The protagonist said, "An explosive effect was imposed on each shot. Let him experience the explosion of a nuclear bomb on himself." The dragon's body was torn into many pieces and the ashes began to spread in different directions. The system window reported, the enemy was destroyed, the passive skill effect was activated, overtaking on the turn. If the enemy's level is higher than his, he gets points as follows: the level difference between him and the enemy, plus 1 point. If his level is higher than the enemy's, he can get up to 3 improvement points, 1 for every 5 levels. A total of 11 normal improvement points were received. The system window reported, he received the legendary improvement of the Shadow Dragon King multiplied by 1. This allows you to improve any item to the legendary level, and also gives an auxiliary special skill. The special skill is the Black Hole Dragon Flash, completely spends stamina, causes an explosion of colossal force, pulling objects into the center of the explosion. The higher the level, the stronger the skill. Yang Jing looked at his hand and thought, the first legendary improvement, a great thing. He clenched his fist and thought, but now due to the necropolis restrictions, he can only use shooting skills, and this special skill is useless. The system window reported, Yang Jing is level 50. His strength is 50 points, speed is 50 points, endurance is 100 points, health is 100 points, physical damage resistance is 53 points, resistance to other types of damage is 0 points, normal enhancement points are 11, legendary enhancement points are 1. Note, from level 50, normal enhancement points are not accepted to improve characteristics, only epic, legendary, superior enhancement points are accepted. Suddenly, the ground behind him began to crack and a huge stone gate appeared from there. Yang Jing looked at it and said, it seems that the final boss will be waiting for him behind the gate. He put his hand on the wall of the door and opened it slightly. After entering, the gate slammed behind him and the protagonist walked forward. He looked around and thought, this looks like a laboratory. He turned around and the doors automatically opened the gate. The professors were sitting at the monitors and talking. One of them said, let them carefully check the data again, they have a presentation to the authorities soon. The other one said, yes. The protagonist walked up to the fence and looked at it. Large flasks were creating monsters, feeding them with power. Rank A zombie, bone-absorbing demon, deep frost beast and rotten mushroom queen, they were all in the flasks. Yang Jing frowned and thought, how many zombies? Were all the zombies outside actually from this lab? He stared forward in surprise and saw the formation of a human figure. The protagonist thought, and Xiaoqi. He jumped down and held out a gun in front of him. Suddenly, open scissors were thrown towards him, which instantly knocked the gun out of his hands. A monster came out of the gate, holding the scissors with its energy field. Yang Jing thought, he was afraid that he couldn't use the revolver now. If he rolled the maximum value, he might accidentally hit the white-haired girl. He would use a cold weapon. He covered his face with his hands and said, Master, his hair just grew back. The professor shouted, there's an intruder, we need to sound the alarm. He stood up and rushed forward, stretching out his hand. Suddenly, drops of blood appeared in front of him, and the white coat fell to the floor. He looked forward in surprise and asked, Major Nan Feng, what is he doing there? Nan Feng folded his arms and said, stop panicking, this is an order. The professor said, he must not want the zombie guards to kill the intruder, so he. Suddenly, a pair of huge scissors flew past him and tore off the monster's head, stabbing it into the wall. Nan Feng looked at his watch and said, 30 seconds. He doesn't know for what reason, but now he seems weaker than during the battle in the city. Is he deliberately holding back his strength? The professor turned around in fear and saw the protagonist and asked, did he get rid of the guards so quickly? Yang Jing frowned and thought, was he watching him? He closed his eyes and said, so be it, he answered him. The system window reported, 1 normal enhancement has been received. The protagonist said, on the heroic difficulty he selected, there are some debuffs that weaken his combat power. Therefore, he has to put more effort into killing zombies there than outside. Nan Feng frowned and remained silent. He asked, he didn't have to answer if he didn't want to, why be so frank? The protagonist stretched out his hand and said, I wonder, no one believed him before. The professor looked around and thought, does it mean that the major knows this intruder? Looks like he's collaborating with the enemy. Yang Jing pointed his finger at him and ordered him to pull the white-haired girl out of the capsule. The professor put his hands in front of him in fear and said, this is not his authority, he is only responsible for recording data and reports. He does not have the authority to open the capsules. The protagonist put the gun to his forehead. He frowned and ordered him to think carefully. Nan Feng said, he is not lying, only the leader has such rights. Let him think for himself, all these objects will become the strongest combat units in the future. Would the leader allow just anyone to open the capsules? Yang Jing replied, then he will just shoot. Nan Feng said, these capsules have special protection, the glass cannot be penetrated by any weapon of existing calibers. The protagonist turned around and looked at the capsule and said, then he will use the reinforcement. Suddenly, the capsule began to sink into the floor and he looked at it in surprise. Yang Jing turned around and saw that the professor was pressing the button. He put a gun to his head and said, well, let him pull it out. The professor laughed and said, too late, the capsule was just sent to the chief. If he gets close to him, he will be torn apart on the spot. The protagonist fired and the professor's blood splattered on the wall. Nanfeng looked at this and folded his arms across his chest and asked, "Where is he going?" The protagonist replied, "He is going to save the white-haired girl." Nanfeng looked at him and replied, "His current combat power is almost a rank, but now he has no chance of winning. The chief is C rank." The protagonist clenched his fists and began to shake with anger. He thought, horror, if he did not have this debuff, he would be able to defeat even C rank. Nanfeng put his hand on his shoulder and told him not to worry, he will help him. Yang Jing asked, why would he help him? Doesn't he obey the chief? Moreover, he is also C rank, he saw with his own eyes how people were experimented on, why didn't he do it earlier? The C rank zombie fighter, Nanfeng scratched his head and said not to think about these details. Let him remember that his ultimate goal is to destroy the Fang family. They have a common enemy, and that is the most important thing. After a while, they stood by the large window and carefully looked out onto the street. Nanfeng said the chief is currently reviewing the troops. A large enemy banner was fluttering in the wind. Zombies in helmets and masks were walking forward. An army of thousands was in the square. The C-rank zombie boss, the chief, was walking across the square, waving his hands. The protagonist asked, let him wait, so he really is the chief? And he was thinking. Nanfeng replied, yes, the chief, that is the name of this one. He frowned and said, all the zombies in the necropolis are his doing. The chief waved his hand and a flask burst out from under the ground. Inside it was an Xiaoqi, with hoses attached to her body. Yang Zheng's eyes widened and he shouted, "And Xiaoqi." The leader opened his sewn-up mouth and said, today, let them welcome another zombie fighter. The zombie's red, crazy eyes stared forward. He shouted, it won't be long before they wipe humanity off the face of the earth. Suddenly, a bullet flew into his head quickly and blood splattered in all directions. The protagonist was kneeling, holding a rifle in his hand. He asked, did he kill this one with one shot? He frowned and thought, is this AC rank? Nanjing pointed his finger forward and said, it's not that simple, let him just look at the crowd of zombies. The leader was standing inside the formation. He raised his hand up and shouted loudly, soldiers, it's time to show your loyalty to the leader. Destroy the murderer. The soldier took out a grenade launcher and fired a grenade towards the building. It flew into the building and broke the glass. The leader looked up and frowned. Suddenly, a bullet pierced his head and blood splattered in all directions. At this moment, the protagonist jumped onto the square and used an explosive flash, leaving a detonator on the ground. He had a conversation with Nanfeng some time ago. Yang Jing said that he had encountered zombies before who used the clone resurrection technique. Is the leader the same type? Nanfeng replied that it seemed so, but the leader resurrects himself by replacing his body. The protagonist asked in surprise, by replacing his body? Nanfeng replied that each of the soldiers he summons sacrifices himself when he is in mortal danger. Yang Jing asked, if he can summon soldiers endlessly, how will they defeat him? Nanfeng replied, it's the summoning radius. There are two ways to defeat him. The first is to destroy all the soldiers within the summoning radius. The second is to take him away from the core. The protagonist held a machine gun in his hands and asked, what is the maximum range? Nanfeng put his hand forward and said he doesn't know, he has served him for quite a long time, but he has never let him close to him. So he will have to act at random. Yang Jing said, he will try to deal with the leader and let him protect the pink-haired one. Nanfeng pointed his fingers okay and answered, no problem. At this time, the protagonist jumped up and activated the detonator and asked, act at random? The zombies put their machine guns forward and began to shoot. Suddenly, the detonator began to grow more and more. The system window reported, C4 was upgraded to Mega C4, 1 normal upgrade was spent, 11 normal upgrade points remained. It activated its energy and scattered the monsters in different directions. Nanfeng stood on a high balcony and said, wow. Such a giant bomb, he will blow up the entire square. Nanfeng waved his hand and used the zombie technique, reinforced bunker. The protagonist turned around and clutched the remote control in his hand and said, the pink-haired girl is safe. He squeezed it and the bomb exploded, illuminating the surrounding area with a bright light. Thousands of bodies turned into ashes, and nearby buildings began to collapse, collapsing on each pile. In the center there was a huge pit. Yang Jing held on to the broken wall and said, now he has no more soldiers. He widened his eyes in surprise and saw a soldier lying on the ground, and his legs were pinned by a boulder. He aimed towards him and said, found. Suddenly, his leg was grabbed by a zombie's hand. The protagonist turned around and was surprised to see himself grabbed by a monster. He used the zombie technique, exploding corpse. A large glow turned this guy's body into ashes. Yang Jing jumped down and was immediately attacked by zombies. The hands of many zombies crawled out from underground. The protagonist thought the soldiers were hidden underground. There was a powerful explosion of corpses and Yang Jing flew to the side. He flew into the jelly-like slime like a fast bullet and thought so. Nanfeng was in his created bunker at this time and was thinking, as expected, the leader had a backup plan. He had been there for so long, and he didn't even know about the body substitution technique and exploding corpses. It seems that the leader didn't expect that this guy would destroy more than 1,000 soldiers in the square in an instant. He put his hand to his chin and thought, the leader even had to use his spare soldiers, but the guy seemed to have escaped with the help of a flash. No matter how many zombies he blew up, he wouldn't be able to escape with the help of a flash. The liquid stops bullets. It seems that this zombie technique prevents him from using explosive flash. The energy from the zombies' bodies accumulated into a huge jelly-like mass. Nanfeng thought, the remaining limbs are secreting bodily fluid. The protagonist put his machine gun forward and fired, but the bullet stopped and he thought, no, the liquid stops bullets, he can't escape with explosive flash. He'll try to swim out. Yang Jing held his breath and swam forward, but nothing worked. He thought, what's wrong? He can't swim out. He can't hold his breath anymore. Nanfeng looked at it and thought, it seems that this liquid is moving behind the object, so there's no way to swim out of this. If he doesn't help it, it won't get out. He put out his hand and used energy. Suddenly, glowing red dots appeared behind him. Nanfeng turned around and saw a creature sitting on a rock. He asked when did that thing appear there? And Xiaoqi's body was glued to hoses. Nanfeng looked at it in fear and thought, horror, the blast wave might hit the pink-haired girl. The bunker exploded and pieces of it flew everywhere. Nanfeng moved down with Xiaoqi covered by his shirt. He said, he let down his guard while watching the battle. Nanfeng looked ahead at the many zombies and thought, Yang Jing, he will have to take care of himself. At this time, the protagonist was floating in the slime, and his rifle was floating further and further away from him. Yang Jing was drowning, stretching out his limbs. Suddenly, the chief came over and stuck his hand in, found the heart energy. He began to pull it out and said happily, his heart is about to stop. When he dies, he will make him a zombie soldier. He has an excellent foundation. The finished product will not be lower than rank A+. At this moment, the protagonist clenched his fist, and the energy spread throughout the liquid. The chieftain looked at it in surprise. The system window reported, 1 normal enhancement has been used up, enhancement points remaining, 10. His health was full. Yang Jing turned around and looked at the zombie. The chieftain screamed, why was he alive? He was already almost dead. Humans don't resurrect. But it's okay, he's still trapped. Resurrect 10 times and die 10 times. The protagonist thought, he's right, he can resurrect himself 10 times, however. He stretched out his hand and created an energy weapon. The system window reported, a combination of Karmic Fire Core plus Necropolis Karambit. 1 normal enhancement has been used up, enhancement points remaining, 9. Karmic Fire Blade obtained. A large blade with a skull on the handle appeared in front of him. The system window reported, Karmic Fire Blade. It is a legendary level weapon, sharp as a razor. When attacking, it activates the effect of Karmic Fire. Karmic Fire is a passive skill that ignites a flame. The stronger the enemy's sins, the stronger the soul burns. Fire Spot is a passive skill that spreads Karmic Fire after the soul burns, and can completely incinerate the enemy. Active Karmic Fire is disabled. He can disable the special skills of Karmic Fire, or spend stamina points to strengthen the power of this. The leader froze in confusion, and then turned around and stretched out his hand and ordered, soldiers, let them tear him to pieces. The zombies burst into the liquid and began to swim towards the protagonist. He wondered, does he want to blow him up from close range? Then he needs to create excess pressure to attack. He swung his blade and began to strike. A large energy flow began to rotate, creating a funnel. It exploded and the liquid scattered to the sides. The leader froze before this, and Yang Jing landed and lowered his sword to the ground. The chief clenched his fist and screamed, impossible! He is the chief and no one can stop the revival of his great deed. He began to accumulate liquid around himself again, and his headdress flew off. Suddenly, a bullet passed through his body, and the protagonist activated an energy flow. A huge funnel moved forward, dissolving the chief's body. Yang Zheng frowned and looked ahead carefully. Suddenly, the chief jumped out from under the ground and turned around and thought mockingly, he has tens of thousands of zombies in his hands, and he can be reborn endlessly. How will he kill him? He asked. Did he put away his sword? The chief rushed forward and shouted joyfully. It seems that he decided to surrender. He laughed and said, let him stand, now he will demonstrate a new technique. Suddenly, an energy flow burst into his sewn-up mouth and turned the chief's body into ashes. Only his boots remained. He moved underground and wondered, what happened? He used body replacement. Why does he keep burning? At this moment, his body began to burn with blue flames and screamed, why is this happening? He burst out from underground and screamed, why? Why? Everything around began to burn and turn into ash. The system window reported, the chieftain has been eliminated. He received 11 normal enhancement points, normal enhancement points remaining, 20. For killing the chieftain, 1 legendary enhancement was received, legendary enhancement points remaining, 2. Special skill, body replacement victim, the zombie soldier closest to him will die in his place. Received, chieftain's core. Special skill, chieftain's power, this allows him to turn the zombies he killed into his zombie puppets, which can be summoned during battle. The zombie puppets must be lower in level than his own. The protagonist threw the brain into the air, when suddenly Nanfeng snatched it out and said, finally. How long has he waited for this moment? Yang Jing frowned and asked displeasedly, what does this mean? He's going to give him his reward? Nanfeng smirked and replied, yes, he used him, but in the end, everyone got what they wanted. He saved his girlfriend, and he will get what he needs. He thinks it's fair. The protagonist frowned and clicked his tongue loudly. Nanfeng's red eyes flashed and asked, does he have anything against it? He doesn't think his girlfriend will like it. Suddenly, Yang Jing turned around and saw a hand with a sand blade coming out from the ground. He jumped up and ran forward. He smashed the stone hand and picked up Inshiochi. The system window reported, Necropolis is about to close. All additional rewards will be calculated after exiting. The protagonist looked up, where the sky and earth began to collapse. Nanfeng said they will meet again. He hopes that by then he will not become a hindrance to him. He climbed higher on a piece of land and went outside. At this time, Fang Shuo was sitting near the door and dozing. Suddenly the door opened and it hit him on the head. Fang Shuo screamed in fear, horror. The ground began to collapse and he asked in fear, did the tomb collapse? But the master has not returned yet. At this moment, a large and bright flash appeared in the sky. Yang Jing descended and put Xiaoqi on the ground. Fang Shuo happily said, fortunately, he was not hurt, master. The protagonist said, there is nothing more for him to do there, he can go back. Fang Shuo smiled and said, okay. Yang Jing said, when he returns, then let him not think of mentioning anyone or anything related to him. Fang Shuo said, okay, he can keep secrets. The protagonist showed him a piece of paper and said that when he gets to the city, let him help him get everything on this list. Fang Shuo narrowed his eyes and said, it will be done. Yang Jing thought, now he needs to find a safe place for Inshiochi. All her relatives have turned into zombies, so she can no longer return to the village. Inshiochi was lying on the ground, her hands under her head. The protagonist thought, she can't go to the city either, he doesn't know how mutated she is yet. He doesn't want to put the city's residents at risk. After a while, he stood on top of the volcano and said, there's an excellent view and a wide space. The mountain is steep enough that it will be difficult for both ordinary and high-level zombies to climb. A defensive tower can be built at the top to easily resist the zombies. Yang Jing turned and looked inside the volcano. He said, inside the crater there is a smooth terrain, which is well suited for building a manor. And Xiaoqi will be quite far from the city. The system window reported, Necropolis rewards. Received, 1 epic enhancement, 1 legendary enhancement, ordinary enhancement points remaining, 20. Epic enhancement points remaining, 1. Legendary enhancement points remaining, 3. 1 legendary Shadow Dragon King enhancement, 1 legendary Chieftain enhancement, 1 legendary non-attribute enhancement. The protagonist looked at it carefully and thought, these are not bad rewards. He put the phone to his ear and said, hello? Fang Shuo said, master, he got all the necessary things. Only he can't see him. He stood on the edge of the cliff listening to Yang Jing. Let him just leave the truck and let him come back. Fang Shuo said, okay. He turned around and walked back, scratching his head. He thought, what is the master going to do with all these things? Bread and fruit, that's okay, but what are seeds and toy models for? After a while, the protagonist was inside the truck and heading to the place. He got out and approached the van and said, the fewer people know about this, the better. Except for the servants, of course. He lifted the truck and put the machine gun forward. The protagonist said, after the necropolis debuff, the strength has returned. After a while, he arrived at the foot of the crater and opened the truck. He stretched out his hand and said the previous improvements were made by the system, and this time he can do everything at his own discretion. He imagined a huge building and shouted, he needs a big house. The protagonist stretched out his hand and created a huge house with his energy. The system window reported, 1 normal improvement was spent, a big house was received, normal improvement points remained, 19. Inside the crater was a large mansion. Yang Jing laughed and shouted, now he has his own home. At this time, a black silhouette of a girl was near the mountain. After a while, there were bags of earth and seeds on the ground. The protagonist began to scatter the earth, and then scatter the seeds. Using energy grew large green trees with large fruits, as well as carrots. The system window reported, 9 normal improvement points were spent, improvement points remained, 10. A huge field of fertile land, a watermelon field, a vegetable field, an apple field, a peach field were received. Yang Jing sighed tiredly and folded his arms and said, with such resources, he won't have to worry about food during the end of the world. And besides, now the City of Dawn no longer has a monopoly on such resources. However, he still has to collect, irrigate and protect these lands. He can't use enhancement points every time he needs something. The system window reported, Zombie Servant Skill. Effect, when a zombie's health bar drops to 20%, he can spend 1 enhancement to make it his servant. Cannot be used on targets that are higher in level than him. The protagonist scratched his head and said before, he killed zombies in order to get points. It's time to catch some zombies. He turned around, and an apple fell from a tree branch and evaporated. Yang Jing turned around and thought, what just happened? He used insight and spoke, it seemed like he imagined it. After a while, he walked through the cow swamp. He thought, he passed there when he was fleeing. He was scared to death when he saw that guy. Suddenly, the protagonist pulled the pin from a grenade and threw it far up and shouted, it's time to plow the land. It exploded and the water formed waves. Suddenly, air bubbles appeared on the surface. A huge creature appeared from under the water and roared. It was a buffalo plowman, a zombie of rank A-. The protagonist grabbed the hilt of the sword and beckoned to it with his hand. He said, let him come to him, show him his signature move. The monster swung its huge paw and hit the stone, parts of which flew to the sides. Yang Jing held a blade in one hand and a gun in the other. In an instant he moved, surprising the buffalo. The protagonist cut off the monster's head and rushed a little further. The system window reported, Buffalo Plowman Zombie of rank A-, 15%. After a while, he returned to his garden and froze in confusion. There was not a single apple on the tree, and the ground was littered with gnawed fruits. Lettuce leaves were also scattered everywhere, and there were holes in the ground. Yang Zheng's perfect garden had turned into a desert. He became very angry and stretched out his hand in front of him and shouted, who did this anyway? A black creature crawled behind him and turned into a dark silhouette. It was a dark zombie devourer of rank A soldiers. Suddenly, the protagonist grabbed her by the huge bag and said, she destroyed everything there. And she also grabbed a huge bag? It turned around and dissolved underground. The creature recreated huge needles, and then mockingly moved forward. Suddenly, a bullet was directed towards it, and the protagonist kicked the creature in the face. The zombie hit the wall and left a huge dent. Yang Jing asked, where did it go? At this moment, a black energy thread began to spread across his face. He was completely covered in it, and fell underground. He lowered his head and asked, the pants turned white? Does the zombie take away the black color from the target? A voice was heard from behind him. He was partly right. It uses the black color of the target to create a magic circle. Inside it, the rest of his body will gradually turn black. And then he will be completely absorbed. Yang Jing stood in the center and seemed to be drowning in water. Suddenly, he saw an energy beam to the side and ran towards it. He thought, the green light turned orange into black. And the white color takes away health points. The system window showed a decrease in health points. The protagonist thought, it seems that this magic circle will turn colors black and then take away this black color. And when his body becomes completely white, he will die. It's time to get out of there. He took out a machine gun and began to shoot forward. The bullets pierced the energy barriers and disappeared. Yang Jing asked, "Do the bullets disappear too?" "Then so." He began to shoot with a flamethrower, spreading fire everywhere. The fire bullets moved forward and created color barriers. The Dark Devourer spoke. No matter how many bullets he fired, he would not be able to escape. Another beam of light is about to appear. Let him prepare to face the consequences of a moment of his life. The protagonist clenched the scabbard and pulled out his sword. He thought about it. This A-rank zombie is not simple at all. He did not think he would have to use this technique. The zombie screamed, "Is there any point in drawing a sword now?" It laughed and screamed, "Let him accept death." The blade was covered in energy, and Yang Jing swung it, rushing forward. He used karmic fire, maximum damage. Everything around was covered in energy, and dissolved the barriers of the Dark Devourer. It screamed, "No! Why is this flame suppressing the black color? No, the magic circle is overloaded." Bright beams of energy began to break through from underground and a large explosion pushed the zombie out. The system window reported that the zombie's health points were 17%. It grabbed its head and screamed loudly. The protagonist continued to spread his fire, and the zombie's body turned into a dark-haired girl. She covered her chest with her hands and said not to kill her. She was just hungry. Yang Jing asked what she was doing there. She blushed slightly and said she used to live near that extinct volcano, and she used to watch it. And then she decided to steal some food while he was gone. The protagonist closed his eyes, sighed heavily, and created clothes. He handed Hale a bag and told her to put it on. Bright rays of light appeared from the canyon and the system window reported, "Hale, the darkness absorber leveled up. 1 normal upgrade was used up. 1 normal upgrade was used up. Hair dye was used up. Normal upgrade points remained, 9. Hale is now his subordinate." The system window reported, "A-rank zombie soldier, level 42. Hale, darkness theft, allows you to take away the black color from the target, reduces health points. Darkness dance allows you to turn the stolen black color into use for making weapons, clones, and so on. Magic circle of darkness allows you to create a huge magic circle of black, inside which you can paint any color black, which can be taken away." Hyla transformed and walked forward. The protagonist looked at her in surprise and said, "Wow." He thought, thanks to hair dye, she became prettier. Hyla fixed her hair and thought. Dumbfounded at the sight of a beauty? He is still just a child. She smiled and thought, the time will come and he will fall to his knees in front of her, and his estate will be hers. Yang Jing shouted in irritation, quickly returned the garden to its original state. He pointed his finger forward and Hyla quickly ran forward. She answered, "Yes." The protagonist covered the bag with energy, and the system window reported, "Zombie rank A 42nd level. Buffalo Plowman body location accelerates the growth of decomposition of organic matter. Plowing turns over the earth. With the help of stones and earth strikes the enemy." The protagonist pointed his finger down and said, "And he will be in charge of the vegetable field. From now on, he and Hyla will take care of this estate." The buffalo only mooed in response. It was covered in energy, and Hyla began to pick apples. Suddenly, a buffalo ran past her with a loud cry, and she turned over in the air. It quickly ran across the territory, using the zombie technique, plowing. Hyla looked at it in surprise and asked, "Is it using zombie techniques to work?" She activated the zombie technique, the clones of the Dance of Darkness, and said then she should be more serious. Dark energy tails headed towards the tree trunks. Her clones began to pick fruits, and the protagonist watched them. He said, with assistance, it will be easier to monitor the estate. Very soon, this place will live and prosper on its own. Yang Jing turned around and looked into the distance and said, "The sound comes from the mountains. It seems there is a fight there." He used his insight and saw that there were a huge number of bloody zombies, in front of which stood Nanyu, a B+ rank zombie soldier. She looked at the bloody rocks and asked, "Why were all the patrols in this area wiped out?" The zombie rushed forward, opening its nasty mouth. Nanyu said, "There are also zombies that explode." There was an explosion and the girl activated a protective barrier. It was a zombie technique, a protective field. Nanyu said, "Too low level, her shield cannot be penetrated." Several zombies rushed towards her barrier, and she was able to turn over in this, using teleportation. Her barrier broke and she jumped back, supporting herself with her hands. Suddenly a voice was heard from behind her, "Long time no see, little sister." She turned around and asked, "Brother?" Nanfeng answered, It seemed that she had become even more tanned. She punched him in the face with her fist and said displeasedly, even he dare not call her that. There was her brother's blood on the stone, and she looked at her fist in surprise. Nanyu thought about it when her punch became so strong. She said, brother, he must have mastered some strange zombie skill again. The zombie said they haven't seen each other for so long, and she immediately attacked him. Nanfeng pushed it aside and said she made brother upset. Nanyu clenched her fist and said, horror of him. She cried and screamed, he's still alive. Why didn't he look for her? Nanfeng put his hand on her head and asked, does he need to look for him? Where there are zombies, there is her too. Nanyu asked, what technique did he master? Where has he been all this time? Will he not return to the city with him? Nanfeng smiled and said, long story, he needs to ask him for something. He needs her help, but she must leave the city. Soon he will raze the city of Dawn to the ground. Nanyu spread her hands and asked, what is he planning? Does he want to destroy the city along with its residents? Nanfeng answered, that's right. She said that he was driven into a dead end by the Fang family, but what is the civilian's fault? Nanfeng screamed angrily, what does she know? He remembered how 3 years ago, a huge monster opened its toothy jaw and screamed. The voice behind Nanfeng said, Commander, try to rely less on zombie energy in battle. Otherwise, he will go crazy one day. Chu Hong, the deputy commander of the 3rd Patrol Squad of B+ rank, looked at him carefully. Nanfeng asked, does she believe these rumors? He has been using zombie energy in battle for a long time, why has nothing happened yet? Chu Hong replied, it's better to be on the safe side. She wrapped her hand around his neck and said, we can't let him turn into a zombie. Besides, she is counting on a promotion. Nanfeng replied, don't worry, he will not become a zombie. After a while, there were drops of blood on the floor. His skin turned blue and he thought in fear, what was going on? What was happening to his body? Nanfeng looked towards the armed guys and asked, what were they doing? He was one of them. The guys started shooting at his body, not sparing the bullets. Nanfeng asked, he was one of them, why were they shooting at him? The guys threw several grenades in his direction and they exploded. The guy looked out from behind the corner and said, he must be dead. Suddenly, his body split in half and he, the second fighter, asked in fear, what was going on? Nanfeng quickly turned around the corner and rushed towards him. He began to strike with his blade, quickly killing the fighters. Nanfeng looked forward with a crazy look, clenching his jaws. He screamed loudly, he will kill every single person. After a while, black cars quickly moved along the road. Inside one of these, the mayor of Dawn City, Fang Xiao, and the elite C-rank guard, Qi Fang, were sitting. She looked at her phone and said, Mayor, there is a list of people who have applied to join the guard. She showed it to Nanfeng and handed the phone to Fang Xiao. He frowned and said, he seemed to remember him, he is from the patrol. He heard that he applied to join the guard several times, but was rejected every time. Qi Fang looked at him and said, the medical examination showed that his degree of transformation into a zombie is too high. Fang Xiao sneered and asked, how can such a person be allowed to join the guard? Let him stay outside the city for the rest of his life. Suddenly, Qi Fang looked around and screamed, there is a zombie nearby. Suddenly, a man jumped out of the forest and rushed at the windshield. Nanfeng broke the glass and looked inside. He swung his blade and looked towards Fang Xiao. Qi Fang extended her hand forward and activated her energy. It pushed him forward and he flew a little distance. Qi Fang jumped out of the car window and rushed after Nanfeng. She stabbed him and he thought, are the elite guards that strong? Blood flowed out of his mouth, and he swung his blade and was about to strike Qi Fang, but she activated a protective barrier. Nanfeng looked at her in surprise and thought, what kind of technique is this? Even his dagger is useless. She created a small energy barrier and sent it forward, causing Nanfeng to fly far into the rocks. Qi Fang turned around and saw an explosion in the sky and ash raining down. She raised her hand and activated the barrier. She looked at the huge hole in front of her and asked, does he want to escape under the cover of his accomplices? He underestimates her. At this moment, Fang Xiao opened the car window and shouted, leave him alone. They need to fix the car. After a while, they were driving on the road. Fang Xiao said, it's hard to get one these days. We need to quickly take it to the old man. The driver replied, there is. Qi Fang said, we can't let this zombie roam the city in case of infection. Fang Xiao looked at her and replied, think about it, a few commoners. He adjusted his hair and said, though if too many of them die, there will be no one to do the dirty work. Okay, they will send out a wanted poster throughout the city. Those who remain silent will be executed. He smirked and said, let Ren Xian join in the hunt too. They will play blind man's bluff with this idiot. After a while, there were bloody footprints on the city sidewalk. Nanfeng walked through the city, and large drops of blood dripped from his body. He clenched his jaw and thought, the horror! Just a second ago, he was standing in front of the guard gate. And now everything turned out like this. He raised his head and looked at the glowing billboard. It had his photo and the inscription, extremely dangerous zombie. Whoever covers him will die. Nanfeng clenched his fist and screamed. He was not a zombie at all. He was the commander of the patrol squad of the City of Dawn. How could they do this to him? The people on the street were carefully examining him. The guy pointed his finger and asked, what is a zombie doing in the center of the city? Where are the guards? Let them kill him. The girl covered her mouth with her hand and screamed, how horrible! How could he become a commander? Nanfeng looked at him in surprise and wondered, why did they do this to him? He was fighting to the death outside. At that moment, a machine gun was pointed at his head and ordered, don't move. The fighters surrounded him and pointed their machine guns and ordered, hands up, on your knees. Nanfeng clenched his jaw and kicked off the ground and headed up. Suddenly, he was kicked in the face and flew back. After bouncing off the ground a couple of times, he hit the ground. Ren Xian, an elite guard, a rank A+ zombie soldier, said she doesn't understand. How did he manage to maintain his humanity after turning into a zombie? Nanfeng looked at her carefully and said she could have cut off his head right now, but she didn't. Is she so interested in the answer to her question? Ren Xian gripped the hilt of her sword and said, Fang Xiao really is capable of executing everyone involved. But he seemed to have opened her eyes. He gave her the idea of going beyond her limitations. Nanfeng lowered his head and said, if she wants to kill, then just kill. If the situation gets out of control, he doesn't know what will happen. Ren Xian grabbed his face and screamed, he won't die just like that. She used the zombie technique, Night Shadow, and disappeared along with him. After a while, Nanfeng opened his eyes and wondered, where is he? Is he already dead? His body was pierced by a sword and he stared in surprise. Nanfeng's body was hanging on thick chains, and Ren Xian pierced his body and said, now? She can thoroughly examine his body. He stared and screamed loudly, and his body was covered with green veins.